All right, so coming up to the stage, we have Natalie Brunel, who's gonna say a few words and then introduce our two panelists that are gonna talk about Bitcoin adoption through Lightning and payments. Natalie, mic's yours, and say a few words about Bitcoin or what you're up to before getting into the panel, and then invite your, let me get that one, and then invite your panelists.
Well, thank you, Tone. It's always fun to be at this conference. Thanks, everyone, for coming. I think that this is really the audience of the true blue Bitcoiners who have come out to these conferences in the bear market that finally might be over. And it's just really nice to be in a more intimate setting where we can actually get to know each other. So I always appreciate conferences like this where you can have maybe more meaningful conversations and meet some new people. So thank you again for having me. I would love to just get the panelists up here because I want to learn about how Bitcoin adoption is changing things in places like El Salvador, somewhere that I had the chance to visit last year. And I want to learn about something a little technical, splicing, if you've heard of it. We're going to be talking about that. So I would love to introduce Dusty Damon. He's the creator of Splice. Round of applause. And Miss Bitcoin, no, Miss El Salvador Universe, Alejandra Guajardo. I hope I said that right. Yay, Alejandra. Did anyone watch the Miss Universe pageant? Yeah? It was cool. They went all out. It was hosted in El Salvador. Personally, I think El Salvador should have won, but maybe in the future. All right, well, first of all, I'll start with you, Alejandra, because you've had a whirlwind year, and you've had the chance to spread the word of Bitcoin, not just throughout communities in El Salvador, but you've been traveling the world. You were orange pilling a lot of the other ladies in the Miss Universe contest. So just tell us about your last year and the efforts. What are you seeing? Are you seeing Bitcoin actually getting adopted by people?
Well, Okay, yeah. I just moved to El Salvador this April. And before that, I was living in Texas and between Texas and Mexico. And well, I moved to El Salvador because I wanted to do more things about Bitcoin because this year especially, lots of people are starting to move to El Salvador to invest, to live with their families there because besides we are the capital of Bitcoin, it's one of the safest countries in Latin America. So a lot of families want to raise their kids over there. And of course, they want to give them a good education about financial freedom. So I've been starting to educate public schools in El Salvador, tell them about my experience, how I started with Bitcoin, why, and the importance of being free in your economy and finances. And I really love it because actually kids are very perceptive about it. They are really interested because a lot of Salvadorans do not know, they think that Bitcoin it's only for people that has money, and that's not true. You can invest $1 a month if you want. So I tell them that you can like you can start like little by little. You don't have to like invest a lot. Instead of buying candies or whatever, you can like invest in $1 because at the end, all of the foreigners are the ones taking advantage of the Bitcoin in El Salvador. That's fine, but Salvadorans should too. So what I want to do is that Salvadorans start like buying and spending their Bitcoin in El Salvador so the adoption will be bigger each time. And it is right now. Actually, every time it's getting more and more Salvadorans are getting to understand what Bitcoin is. And yeah, it's getting there. And I'm sure that in a couple of years, like very soon, 100%, they will start like using it more.
It was really inspiring to visit El Salvador. I went last year. I'd love to go back just to see, the change, because it seems like things are moving in such a rapid direction, partially because of the adoption of Bitcoin. But I would go to the local vendors, and they all have all sorts of different wallets that can accept Bitcoin. Some of them use the Bitcoin Beach wallet. Others had Wallet of Satoshi or Moon, Chivo wallet. And I want to circle back to some of those themes. But speaking of Lightning wallets, Dusty, I would love to learn a little bit more about, I know that splicing is something that allows you to adjust the size of the Lightning channel and helps fix some of the issues where if you create a Bitcoin wallet, you have to kind of choose between Bitcoin or Lightning, right? Very few have both. And it's because you really can't separate, except with your tool you can. So can you talk a little bit about that for especially folks like me who have maybe sixth grade coding knowledge?
Okay, I'll do my best. You had a great intro there. You clearly understand a lot about it. The splicing was a product I took on a couple years ago, and its main goal was to resize channels. But what's become apparent over time is it actually accidentally solves a whole bunch of other problems, some that affect actual users of these apps. And probably the big one, which I think you led into perfectly, is if people that have a Bitcoin regular on-chain wallet and a Lightning wallet, you have to manage two of these balances. And that's just going to confuse new users. It does. I've had those questions. People get very confused by it. And turns out, if you want to say, if you want to make a 0.1 Bitcoin payment to somebody on chain, that's the same thing as reducing the capacity of your Lightning channel by 0.1 Bitcoin. So by resizing the channel, we've actually enabled on-chain payments from Lightning channel balances. So what this spells out, we're at the beginning stages of the adoption of this. But what this spells out is eventually, I think all wallets they won't be a Lightning wallet and a Bitcoin wallet. They'll all be Lightning wallets under the hood, and they'll just do all the types of payments that you'll need to do.
Well, how many of you have accidentally tried to send a Lightning payment to a Bitcoin wallet or vice versa? I mean, I've done it. I did it recently. I'm like, why isn't this sending? It's not sending. Oopsies, I was sending on-chain when I was really trying to send a Lightning transaction. So a question for both of you. Dusty, you can start. How do we help educate people? Because for so many, Bitcoin still feels intimidating because there's so much to learn. Like the other day, I had an educational seminar with folks that were, the ages of 50 to 60 range. And by the time I got to talking about like multi-sig custody, they were like, I'm never going to learn this. So how do you overcome that to help educate people about really how simple it can be?
Well, how you educate is a hard question, right? And I think from a technical perspective, what I want to do is solve the problem so you don't have to teach them. The more we can simplify the actual experience, the less those hurdles are. And I think educating in general has been a kind of a struggle the last couple of years because the way we pay in Bitcoin has changed so dramatically. Like a totally correct class 2 years ago is not very relevant today. So you have this kind of moving target. I think that it's kind of a longer term answer, but I think fast forward a few years, we get the thing so simple that onboarding gets a lot easier. Now, there's still a lot of other hurdles of education, but that's something that I'm really focused on is how do we just have less hurdles?
Alejandra, how about you? What do you think in terms of educating people in El Salvador and throughout your travels about how this actually works so that they trust something like a Lightning wallet?
Well, actually, in Latin America, there's a lot of remesas. I forgot the name. It's
Remittances? Or no?
How you say it? Yes?
Yeah,
Okay.
remittances.
So that people that lives in the U.S. send money to all their families from Mexico all over to Argentina, Latin countries. So for me, the easiest, it would be, of course, Lightning. You could send money fast with with a little bit fee because they send a lot of money in Western Union, it's like super complicated to send money to their families. So for me, I think I will be touching that aspect. That will be super easy to start sending money through Bitcoin to your family instead of having this amount, huge fees when sending money to another bank accounts. And then the other day, I was in an Uber and I met this guy that he came from Guatemala. He was living in El Salvador because he had some, ¿cómo se dice? They assaulted him in Guatemala. So he wanted to go live in El Salvador because it's one of the safest countries, and so he can he can send money to his family in Guatemala. And he told me, I cannot open a bank account in here because of my papers, because of this. And I was like, well, the solution is Bitcoin, you know, like you can open a wallet, you can open an account, and you don't need anything. Like you don't need your passport and anything. I helped him, and he was like, oh my God, you literally saved my life, because I couldn't send money to my family because the banks here in El Salvador, they won't open an account for me. So I think that also it's like something very important, and that it will save literally lives to lots of people, because like that example, you know, like I was like literally super sad because of him, you know?
No, it's really transformative what it will do for millions and millions of people that send remittances. I live in St. Louis, and I met a woman who is from the Philippines, and she sends money back. And she was talking about the inflation problem there, because inflation is everywhere, and it's far worse than here. And it's like, just to solve that problem, just, you know, there's so many things to tackle and address, but even just solving that will save millions and millions and millions of dollars per year. I wanted to ask you, do you see that people in El Salvador are saving more, being able to finally accumulate a little bit and save it for the future? Or do you still think that people are largely kind of taking money in, spending it, or maybe taking in fiat and then converting it, or taking Bitcoin and then converting it back to fiat? Or are people actually saving?
Yeah, some people, I want to pay them in Bitcoin, and they, to be honest, yeah, they want to convert it to USD because, like I said, like there is not enough education still in El Salvador. I will have to say, but yeah, in the Salvadoran government, they did great about putting Bitcoin as legal tender, but they didn't put like any education. And at the beginning, when they put the Bitcoin as legal tender, they gave $30 to all citizens in Bitcoin, of course, with the Chivo wallet. But then some people were hacking the apps, so they were taking the $30 from them. So then all of them, they were like, oh, they stole our money, the government made this. And when I remember I told one of my friends, like, yeah, I can send you Bitcoin. And he was like, oh, I had the Chivo wallet, I had my $30. And then I wanted to use them, and 3 days ago, they disappeared. So they stole it, so that's why I don't want to use Bitcoin, you know? So because of that, like, it's like they think it was like the government, but well, at the end, that wallet, it's centralized. So they need to know the difference, you know, of another apps that they can use, and of course, no one will steal their money.
Yeah. Dusty, what could possibly help address some of that?
Oh, great question. Well, what we need is more self-custodied wallets, right? Like when you have your wallet, your funds with somebody else, it can get stolen. And it's a bummer to hear that people in El Salvador are getting burned off Bitcoin because of that. But I guess that's kind of unavoidable. And I think like one of the things that some of us developers got to do is get the self-custody wallets as easy to use as the Chivo wallets. And then once those exist, then we gotta evangelize them. But you know, I think your education points is a really good one. Like I think that I don't know how we could start an initiative to get more people just understanding how to use these wallets and like what custody and self-custody means. I don't even know how to say that in Spanish. And that's the kind of stuff that like really would be helpful to people like that. Because I think a lot of people, if they try Bitcoin once and get burned, you kind of lose them for a while. It takes probably years for them to get over it.
Well, not only do we need more people using it, but also liquidity. Can we talk about that? Because that's obviously something we also need if the Lightning Network is really going to work and scale to the level we want it to. Also, do you think that there might be competitors to the Lightning Network in the near future?
Oh, well, those are two great questions. The liquidity one's interesting because there's this property with Lightning that you can send funds in one direction to a limit, and that limit runs out. So if you go back to remittances, I don't know the numbers, but I believe there's already a lot of remittances coming from the U.S. to El Salvador over Lightning. and those are routing through these lightning routing companies. And they have this constant problem of all of their liquidity being drained in one direction. They have to find a way to get it back. And this is one of the things that feels like a plug. One of the things I've been working on is splicing. It helps those routing nodes manage their liquidity better, and it lowers their costs by quite a lot, which translates to the fees that are already low on Lightning being even lower for those remittances.
Wow.
What was the second question again?
Will there be a competitor to Lightning?
Oh, I'm ready for it. Bring it on. I think there was ARC got a lot of buzz a month or two ago, right? And I think that was more of an idea of something to replace Lightning. And I think that I don't want to get too technical, but there is this problem that we can, if we count up and do the highest possible number, we could maybe get 1 billion what are called Lightning channels per year. And you can do the math. There's 8 billion people in the world. That's just not enough, right? So we're going to need some kind of solution to scale Lightning past that eventually. And I think having more competitors try to build those solutions, because I know ARC was one of its design goals was to be able to scale way past 1 billion to maybe tens or hundreds of billions. And I think those are actually in the dev community. These are old ideas, but they're not talked about because we're all busy working on Lightning. But I think that more competitors trying to push in that envelope is good. It just means more research, right? It's one of those things where we all win.
I want to get a little bit more personal for a moment. Alejandra, when I was in El Salvador, I visited a place called Hope House. I'm not sure if you've been there. I think you probably have. But it was really inspiring to see so many women coming together. Some of them are now creating their own businesses and accepting Bitcoin and Satoshis for payment. They're finally able to kind of contribute a little bit more and also potentially save for the future. And they talked to the group that I was with about how they used to just want to leave, or they had family members who left El Salvador. And now they either are coming back or they don't feel like they need to leave. They don't feel like they need to try to, migrate to the United States. They're actually building their dreams in El Salvador, where they're from, where their culture is. Can you talk a little bit about the hope that Bitcoin is bringing in terms of just building El Salvador to be a prosperous nation and provide opportunity to both men and women?
Yes. There's millions of, I will say 3 millions, if I'm not mistaken, of Salvadorans that live in the USA. And they actually are, a lot of them, going back to El Salvador to open business, to be with their families again, because I don't know if you know, but back then, El Salvador was one of the most dangerous countries in the world because of the maras. They were they were the ones ruling, gobernando El Salvador. So now with the new government of Bukele, he took all of the maras, and now everyone is coming back to their countries. And yeah, like you said, now no one wants to leave from El Salvador. Now they want to stay. They want to now have new opportunities because they now can. Back then, they, like the girl that made pupusas, that is for traditional food, she had to give some rent to the maras every month, but all businesses. And of course, if you don't give them the money, then they will rape you or kill you or all of that. So now that woman can have a lot of business, because before that, she would only think, okay, I'm just gonna have this business. If not, I will have to give the maras more money if I have two business and if I win more. So now all of those people can actually grow their business and be more safe with their families as well. So yeah, I've been watching that a lot of people are coming back to their hometown and actually getting advantage of the new opportunities that El Salvador is making.
Well, what has it meant to you to also return, since you spent so much time in Mexico City, but also Texas, the US? What does it mean to now spend so much time in the country where your heritage is as well?
Yeah, my dad, when he was little, he told me that when he went to El Salvador, like there was like it was super dangerous. The militaries were there everywhere, so we never went a lot. To be honest, it was like, for why are you going to El Salvador? Like there is nothing in there, you know. Like literally, people will say that. But now, like that, it's super safe. There's a lot of opportunities. It's Bitcoin country. Well, for me, I'm super, super happy to be living there. Also, the people is very welcoming, very warm. Like, you feel that everyone is so happy. You feel like their lives are perfect. That's what I feel, at least. And yeah, like the city, it's growing a lot. So right now, it's the time to invest. If you want to do like some business, right now it's the time. Because everything is kind of cheap, the land, and to build business about Bitcoin too. Like a lot of people are going only to do their Bitcoin business. So that's the place to be right now for me, at least. You know, like I could be living in Mexico City. Yes, it's a huge city. I love it. My family lives there. But for me, right now, the opportunity, it's in El Salvador for sure.
It's such a beautiful place. I really do recommend you guys all go to check it out, spend some sats, support the local community, and learn to surf. Alejandra surfs a little bit, which is really cool. Dusty, turning to you, you've been coding since the age of 12.
You looked me up, yeah.
Hello, of course. I want to learn a little bit about like how this passion has grown for you, because obviously Bitcoin wasn't around when you were little. You had this passion though for computers, maybe for impacting the world through code. We have to protect code as free speech. But can you talk to me a little bit about your journey, because you've been in Bitcoin for a very long time?
I have, yes. I think, so I've been coding since I was 12, like you said, and I've worked a lot of like Silicon Valley startup jobs, and you start to get this sort of like mental atrophy where you're like, cool, I'm getting these huge paychecks, but like, what am I building of impact? You know, and like most of the startups I worked for, like were gone in like a couple years. And after like, you know, doing that for a decade, I was like, I want to do something that actually matters, right? Like more important than just getting the biggest salary is like, I want my work to have an impact on the world. And for when I found Bitcoin, when I first found it, I happened to be studying monetary history before I found it, which was lucky. I had this question in my mind. I think it was part of the same like mental thing of I was working for money in Silicon Valley, and I was like, okay, the majority of my time is spent making money. I should know what money is, which it seems like an obvious question in hindsight, but like almost nobody asks it. And once they asked that question, I just started deep diving into the history of it. And like monetary history is a section of economic history that's like unique in its own, and it's hard to find information on it. And I ended up like digging really deep. And then I found on the internet this like Bitcoin thing, and I was like, oh my God, it fixes all of the problems that I had just learned about with monetary history. But that was pretty early on. I thought it was a cool project. You know, I was like, I support this. I hope it works, but like I think the odds are low. And I'm just delighted how wrong I was. And I for a long time I wanted to change my career over, which was very hard. You know, like sitting in Silicon Valley making those cushy salaries is great. And I was like, I just need to make the jump. And then I just left. I went to Austin with like no job or anything, and I was like, I'm gonna figure this out. And then I just started working on this stuff for like a year and change before I even got a grant or anything. And now I'm keep doing it, and it's the most fulfilling work I've ever done.
I think probably all of us and the people in this room as well, whether you work in the space or not, it's just such an inspiring movement to think that we could fix some of the most fundamental problems in society through fixing the money. But you have to obviously understand money first. To start to wrap up a little bit, Alejandra and Dusty, tell me a little bit about what you think is really missing in terms of helping get this message out in the right way. I feel like there's so many people now that have heard of Bitcoin, especially when the price starts to go up. You hear it in the news more. But what are we missing? Why haven't we had 1 billion Bitcoiners onboarded yet? And what do you think we need to change or do as a community in order to solve for that?
I can go first if you're thinking. Do you want to go? So like I have a story about this. So I found Bitcoin back in like 2011, and I was trying to convince my family about it. And I was like this huge evangelist. It was like every moment I'm like, hey, money works this way. And I had all these arguments built up about like, here's the history of money and why this makes sense. And they didn't listen to a lick of it. You know, so after like 5 years, I finally just gave up trying to convince them. And then a year later, they're like, hey, how's that Bitcoin thing work? And so for me, like I had to let go of convincing them before I could actually convince them. And I think there might be a lesson there for how we convince the rest of the world, which is try to focus on like the actual value it brings to them, like individual points, and like slow down from saying, hey, this fixes the world, to being like, hey, this fixes your remittances, and try not to sound like too much of a religious zealot. I have to remind myself of that.
Well, I will say Bitcoin, it's like the internet in the 90s. You know, people were like, what is that? Like, I don't want to use internet. I want to keep like writing in my notes. Like, what is that? Like, that's so complicated, you know? But now no one can live without the internet, you know? So for me, I think Bitcoin is going to be exactly the same in a few years. And well, to be spreading the word, I think you need to do it with example, you know, like telling people why you are into Bitcoin, how does it work, why it is so important to be financially free, and why you need to be like out of the system, because at the end the system, not only in money but in medicine, in food, it's intoxicating us. So I think that's the most important thing to tell the world, that the system doesn't want us to be rich, to be better, to be greater, you know, they want us to be oppressed. So I think it's very important not only to tell them about financially free, but to be free in all aspects, in food, in medicines, like I said, because I also do that. I grow my own organic food. So for me, it's not only the money. At the end, you cannot eat Bitcoin, no? So it's to be 100% independent in all aspects. And I know it is hard to put that chip into people, but I think, I know that eventually it will spread more, because diseases are everywhere. Millions of people are with lots of like cancer and all of this. So one day they will open their eyes and see that freedom is in Bitcoin and growing your own organic food.
I think there's like a real opportunity right now because of inflation happening in the U.S. And I think like the government keeps telling us like, oh, inflation's less, that turkey dinner's cheaper or something, and nobody believes them anymore. Like collectively, the entire country is like, yeah, they're full of it. So I think we're kind of at like a moment where like I think people are more ready to hear this stuff.
Yeah, I think we're at an inflection point. I think people are starting to realize that they're being gaslit, that what we're being told is not the reality that they see, and who are you going to believe, them or your own lying eyes, right? So I think we're moving in the right direction. But Alejandra, I have to ask you one more question, because we saw those videos of you orange pilling the ladies of Miss Universe. They were literally from every country around the world. So, I mean, first of all, how did you explain it to them? And what were some of the questions that came up? Because maybe there'll be some of the questions that we encounter when we're trying to orange pill our friends and family. Yeah, how did you explain Bitcoin to them in Miss Universe?
Well, first I told them that my country was legal tender in Bitcoin. Of course, a lot of them, they were like, okay, but how does that work? It sounds like very difficult. Like, where do I invest? You know, so I just opened them a wallet, and then I sent them some sats. And they were like, oh my God, it's that easy, it's that fast. And I was like, yes, now you can spend all of that in El Salvador in whatever you want. So they were super happy about that. And then they were super, super excited when I put like some videos and I put their lighting address, and they were like, keep receiving sats. You know, they were cents at the end, but they were sending, you know. Yeah. So they were like super excited, and they actually wanted to go and spend something, because it's really fun, and also it's so easy. When you actually see it, when someone explains to you, it's like, That's it. You know, like at the end, it is easy. And you are you're the full owner of your money. And I explained to them that, okay, money it's getting lower and lower, and because of the inflation. And I explained that like 10 years ago, what was the cost of a Coca-Cola, for example? Now you cannot buy a Coca-Cola from the money that you had 10 years ago of now, you know? So that's like, those are like little examples that I tell to them so they can understand, because they're like easy to understand. And I hope they keep like buying Bitcoin and actually keeping it and not spending, not converting it to dollars.
I hope so too. Those videos were really fun to watch. And what you just said, Alejandra, made me think of a question for you that I have to ask, because some of those wallets were, I think, Wallet of Satoshi just had that news saying, okay, if you're a US user, you can't download the wallet anymore. Can you speak to some of the concerns that are out there with regards to privacy and how some of these non-custodial wallets are going to face headwinds when it comes to regulators?
Well, I think it might actually be the other way around. I think the custodial ones are the ones that face the most headwind. If you look at a company like Cash App, they're fully legalized, KYC, the whole process. Well, Satoshi wasn't, right? And I think the key thing, at least here in the U.S. legally, was they're holding other people's funds without doing following all the regulations required to do so. And I think self-custody wallets kind of slip through that. I think that the best one in my mind right now is the Phoenix wallet, which is totally self-custodial, and it works pretty well. And I have not heard of them having one legal issue whatsoever. And I think that, like, obviously the laws can change. Maybe one day Congress is like, you know, we want everyone on, if they were smart, they'd want everyone on a custodial wallet. But the way the laws are now aren't that way. And I don't think they're going to be able to organize and understand this before that gets around. So I really think one of the struggles I've had is you bring someone onto Bitcoin, you set up with an app like Wallet of Satoshi, and I've done this with a bunch of different apps over the years. The app goes away in like 2 years. It just repeats over and over and over again. And I honestly think self-custodial wallets, particularly if they have backups, are a way to get around this in the future.
All right, we're out of time almost, so last 30 seconds, each of you, final thoughts.
I love Bitcoin. Well, I'm excited you all are here. I'm excited everyone's here. I feel like I'm a little kind of an OG Bitcoiner 10 years ago, or time, how does it work? It's 11, what, is that 12 years? But I was a very silent lurker Bitcoiner back then. And the amount of people involved in Bitcoin were so small, and it's been so inspiring for the world, like hopeful, to just see the numbers keep growing and growing. And the people are smarter and more interested and more focused than ever before. And so that's you guys, and it's awesome.
I just want to thank Tone for inviting me, and thank you all for being here, listening to us. And also, I just want to say something really quick. So I'm new, kind of new, like in the Bitcoin community, and to be honest, I've never met so many authentic people, and so like warm and welcoming. To be honest, I love Bitcoiners. They're great, and I'm so happy to be part of this community. And I will keep educating kids, not only in El Salvador, but around the world. I would love to do it. I would love to do that, and I know I will do it. And I'm so happy to be here. Thank you all.
That is so well said. Nothing more needs to follow that. Thank you guys so much for having us.
Thank you so much for coming.
Thank you.
It was excellent. All right. Hope you guys enjoyed that panel. Oh, ladies. Oh, actually, I think you've already done it. We have one of our paint. So if you don't have your signature on that, Alejandra, I know you don't, but Natalie, you might. So if your signature is not there, any of the speakers, please come up and sign it. Awesome. All right, so we got something interesting for you guys today. Actually, for the next two panels. We're going to go a little bit more debate style in Bitcoin. So today's day has basically been freedom technology, Bitcoin adoption, and now we're going to have a couple of debates. I want to bring Gary up to the stage, who will moderate or like referee this debate. I'm going to let him introduce everything, and Gary is a great friend and host of BitBlock Boom. I'm sure you've seen the flyers outside. Gary, you're going to be, oh, you can be on that side. It doesn't matter. Pick your side. Or you can sit in between them. It's up to you.
After what I saw earlier today.
All right. So Gary's going to take the middle, and we're going to have them on the side here. It'll be a little bit interesting. And I'll let Gary take it from here. Let him introduce them and then start the clock.
Hello. Okay, welcome everybody. I'm Gary Leland, the founder of BitBlock Boom, like he said, and the host of the first ever Unconfiscatable debate with Jimmy Song and Mike Jarmuz. Now, Jimmy, go ahead. Jimmy is a Bitcoin developer, an education person, an entrepreneur, an author. He has been on hundreds of podcasts and TV shows talking about Bitcoin and has been all around the world speaking at Bitcoin conferences. Mike, on the other hand, is the managing partner and co-founder of Lightning Ventures, dedicated to Bitcoin investing. Mike is a strong believer in Bitcoin investing and believes that investing in startups is a great way to have help your strong HODL position. Give him a little bit of hand here, guys. Now to give you a little bit of rules about the debate here. First of all, this is for fun. I don't want to see you getting over here and slapping him or anything. So let's have a good time here. The debate's going to last 30 minutes. And when I ask a question, you have 3 minutes to answer. After 3 minutes, you will hear. Okay. And try to finish up your answers. Try to finish up your answers. We're trying to be official. I'm trying to be official.
This is serious.
We're serious stuff here. Tone asked me to do this, and I'm going to do it right. Valuable time. Okay, here's question number 1 for Jimmy. What is your view of venture capital?
I think venture capital is like a lot of functions in a fiat economy. It is handling money. Their purpose is managing money. And like most money managers, there is a significant component of rent seeking. So you know this about banking. You know this about investment bankers, hedge funds, places like that. They are all taking money from one group, trying to invest and doing things because they're trying to outrun inflation. And there's a significant rent-seeking component, particularly with VC funds. I liken them to the modern-day banker. If you watch something like It's a Wonderful Life, right, old movie, there's like that evil banker guy that's like putting out loans, really trying to capture all the value and so on. I think VCs at this point are more or less that. They are the people that do the loans. They call it equity, but it's really a loan. And they try to capture as much value as possible without actually adding all that much. Now, I say this as a developer, as a startup guy. I've worked at like 12, 13 different startups. 2 of them exited in a public market. And I know how the whole system works. And I know how much rent seeking there is, and I know how much VCs really don't add that much. And it's funny because they like to make themselves out to be people that are very smart, that know exactly what you should do and so on. Really what they're doing most of the time is fattening you up like a commercial pig and hoping that you don't die in the process. Right? Their goal is to get you to $1 billion to become a unicorn, and they try as hard as they can to get you to that level because there are certain advantages in a fiat economy that come with being large. So in a sense, they're kind of the worst thing that can happen to a lot of startups, and they die as a result. And you can kind of tell that they haven't been that great for the economy because most of their companies fail. Most of the pigs that they try to fatten up die, right? the few that survive end up being like the Facebooks and the Googles of the world, and that justifies the 97% failure rate or whatever. And really, the ones that get acquired that are considered successes are not really. They're just, Cantillon effects, basically, the larger companies eating the smaller ones and so on. But yeah, I don't see how venture capital really adds all that much value. Now, Bitcoin venture capital might be a little different, and I will give Muzz that it has different values, and it's a little bit less sort of like investment bankerish, and a little bit more sort of like that original spirit that they try to project with everybody else.
Okay, Muzz, rebuttal?
Damn it, Gary, I'm glad you're in between us, because let me tell you, if you weren't, okay, it'd be a whole nother story here. I mean, that was a whole lot of misinformation and jabs and everything else that he just said there, okay? The 97% failure rate, no. And VCs do a lot. They do a lot of value, but just like everything else, right? Just like your insurance salesman or your attorney, your graphic designer, your consultant, your mileage may vary, okay? And we get lumped in all in this one category of basically a whole group of people, right? A whole industry. And venture capitalists serve basically an essential function. If you were to name all the companies who had no venture funding, it would be like 5. GitHub, MailChimp, Patagonia, IKEA. There's a few outlying companies that have never raised any venture capital, but literally every other massive company, every other successful company has gone this route. So the question would be, how would you then scale? Would you just somehow build it without a capital infusion, a trusted network of people to help you with hiring, specialized knowledge in a field, navigating regulatory environments, partnerships? There's a number of value adds that VCs do. They're not just rent seeking, okay? Speaking for myself, I love working with companies in whatever capacity that I have, because we're a boutique emerging small group, right? I can only put as much of my heart and effort into it as possible. But it is certainly not write a check and go away. Okay, that's not what I do, that's not what we do, and there are plenty of people who do that. So you can have that type of experience where VCs maybe are just, what does Jimmy say, sucking blood, or what is it, rent seeking, and all of these kind of things. But they definitely play an essential part. Like, take, for example, a sports team, okay? You have the best athletes in the world. Why do they need a coach? Why do the best athletes in the world need a coach who doesn't even know how to play the game on the sideline? I want to go work out. I need a trainer. Well, the machine's right there. What do I need a trainer for? I'm going to sit there and just do my reps, right? So it's a long-term partnership with somebody who's there through the various life cycles of your company that's helping you grow it, okay? Whether that's at the earliest stages or the later stages, that person you are married with, so choose wisely. And I believe that it's absolutely essential, and I don't think that any company, if they want to hyper scale, I don't think you can do it without venture funding.
All right. Can I respond to that?
Sure. Go ahead.
All right. So Mike brought up a lot of points, but he's not making the points that he thinks he's making, because he pointed out that most of the super large companies got venture funding. That's evidence of the fact that it's fiat-induced scale, right? It's not organic growth in any way. It's really just like infuse a lot of cash, and you can do that in a fiat economy because you can get a lot of loans, especially if you're past the unicorn mark and so on. So, he doesn't point out the fact that most small businesses take 0 venture funding, and they're great lifestyle businesses. If you go work for a lot of these large companies, what is it like? It's soulless. Ever work for like Chase Manhattan Bank or something like that? Like what? How satisfying is that versus like a small family-run company or something like that? Like the scale thing isn't in of itself a good. The fact that it happens in a fiat economy just speaks to the fact that these large companies are really rent-seeking. And I don't think that should be held up as the model of like good companies and what the economy should be like. I actually think companies should be much smaller. Like, right, past Dunbar's number, it's very hard to keep track of the people in there, and you get treated like a robot or a slave in many of these companies. So, like to say, okay, well, you know, all these large companies took venture funding. Well, that's actually evidence against the point that it's a good thing. The other thing that Mike was talking about, I'm trying to remember what it was. But you know, he was going on about how they add so much value, and this is the spin that they always want to tell you, is that every VC thinks that they are adding so much. I can tell you that as somebody in a startup, they got in the way most of the time, and they wanted you to always hire way more than you needed because they wanted you to be that commercial fattened pig. And of course, they wanted you to be more dependent on them, so they would have you spend lots and lots of money and reduce your runway so that you would go back to them if you were successful, or you could just die out and like they wouldn't have to think of you. So I don't see that as like necessarily a very good thing for a lot of these companies. Most companies should be growing slower. You should be looking at profit and not just like spending your way to wealth through like Cantillon fiat games. It really should be much more about providing value to the economy, by providing value to customers. And unfortunately, it's you know, let's try 30 different things. We'll fund you, and if one of those hits, then you know we're gonna fund that even more. And you know, hopefully you don't die in the midst of it. Again, you're being treated like a commercial pig, right? Fatten you up as much as possible, and if you die, you die. But if you don't, then great, we get to keep the proceeds, right? Like that's sort of the thing that you get.
Muzz?
Lord. All right, so first off, nobody's fattening up any pigs over here, okay? I assure you, all right? But let's just take a scenario. All right, first off, keep kosher, okay? There's no pigs being slaughtered here, okay? But if you're starting out on your new business, okay, you're a young entrepreneur, Jimmy, back when you were young, you know, you would actually need some sort of capital, right? You might have an MVP, okay? And you might need $500K. $400,000 to hire a couple of engineers, right? I'm not talking about this bloated over-hiring, but how do you get to your first 500 users? How do you get your first 1,000 customers, okay? That capital is very important. And by the way, what the heck risk do you have? Because guess what? If you fail, the joke's on me or anyone else. So what do you have to lose? What do you actually have to lose? And I'm not talking about governance. I'm not talking about board seats. I'm not talking about all these other things that come along at a Series A level and beyond, okay? I'm not talking about you potentially risking losing control of your company. I just mean at the earliest stages, there's literally no drawback, okay? I cannot tell any of our 40 Bitcoin companies and startups that we've invested in, I can't tell them a darn thing. All right? I mean, we can have regular calls, and I can be helpful, and I can do all sorts of value-added things that apparently don't exist, right? Hey, we're looking for a CMO, and you refer someone, and then they get hired, right? You know, these things happen all the time, okay? I'm not in there coding. I'm not a technical person, right? But there are a lot of value adds that go beyond capital, and I just don't think that you're giving that any credit. And then at the same time, I'm not talking about lifestyle businesses. I'm not talking about selling hats, okay? I'm talking about high growth, early technology companies that are setting out to be massive, massive businesses, you know? And that's what it's investing in. That's what we're investing in. That's what venture capital is all about. It's not about the boutique small industry.
All right, and he just proved that he's not fattening cows, but he wants the high growth, super large businesses, right? What does that sound like to you? Does that sound like that's exactly what commercial pig farmers do, is fatten up their pig so you can sell them in the market. He just kind of contradicted himself, right?
Let's wrap this up so we can do more than one question. This is going to be one question at this rate.
I mean, I'm okay with that, to be honest, but whatever. All right, let's go.
Okay,
Go on.
let's go. So it was a good question. I started off with number two. Question number two. I'm excited we're getting two in here. Muzz, to you. What risks and rewards are associated with venture capital in the Bitcoin ecosystem?
Well, investing in Bitcoin companies, we're early, right? So if you think, okay, well, we're at what are we at? $43,000 Bitcoin price. We all know it's going up forever, okay, to the six figures, to beyond, okay. So what does a $250,000 Bitcoin price? What does that mean for a company like Swan, or Unchained, or Strike, or any of these companies? What does that mean when we get to that level, okay? When you're talking in terms of users, growth, valuation, services, products, abilities, right? So if you're bullish on Bitcoin and you have some Bitcoin, I believe a great thing that you can do to diversify some of that HODL position is to actually invest a little bit in Bitcoin companies. Also, investing in early stage technology companies, you're going for large returns, right? I don't know about fattening pigs, okay, but that's ultimately where a ton of money is made, like life-changing money. These are not meme stocks. These are not, crypto tokens. These are real equity, real investments into early stage companies. So the rewards can be huge. There are periods of time where there aren't too many comps because we're early in Bitcoin, right? You take a Kraken, you take a Coinbase, you take some of the later stage companies that we have, even a Blockstream, okay? And they will outperform the price of Bitcoin over certain time periods, right? Not always, all right? Not forever, but historically they will. So that's kind of the reward. The risk, well, you can lose all your money, and it happens. So the chances of a stage Bitcoin startup going from $10 million valuation to 100, I've seen that happen in months, okay? 8 months, 10 months, okay? It happens. Bitcoin 10 year and going from 42 to 420,000, it's gonna be tough, right? It's gonna be tough to do that in less than a year, okay? But at the same time, the chances of Bitcoin going to zero versus the chances of pick any Bitcoin company in the space that you know and love going to zero is a whole different risk-reward profile.
And we can see exactly why so many VCs are into altcoins and gambling, right? Because listen to what he just said. He said you can get 10x on this, and it might not perform as well, or Bitcoin might not perform as well. It's always the hope of the big score without doing as much work. Okay, I can't emphasize this enough. He risk here if you're a company and you're taking my money, because if you fail, then I take all of the loss. No, what you're losing is your time, because you are going to be expected to work 80 hours a week, to do everything you can to scale the business, to eat as much as possible as the commercial fattened pig, so that you grow to be the size that they want you to be, rather than growing organically and going based on. So what he's saying here is, okay, you can do way better sometimes with Bitcoin startups and so on. You might hit, you might not, and I don't see how that's really any good. And the hope is that you get disproportionate returns compared to the amount of effort that you put in. And that ultimately is really a form of rent seeking. You really want to you want to get as much value as possible while putting as least effort into it as possible, and let other people do all of the work. And that to me is really the part that's kind of unconscionable for a lot of VCs. This is why so many VCs are into altcoins, because they see this same dynamic. Now, it might not be Bitcoin startups. It might be on altcoin or FTX or whatever. But this is the thing. They're not really adding value. The value that they're adding is the capital that they're putting in, and that's by far the biggest thing that they put into any company. And part of it is reputation and getting other VCs to invest in you. But this is the game, and that's the important thing to realize. Now, I personally would encourage you as a Bitcoin maximalist to keep your money in Bitcoin, right? Hurdle rate is much higher, and you don't have all of this risk or work that you have to do to get in on the best deals, because that's really what most VCs spend their time doing.
Okay, so buying and holding Bitcoin is the easiest. okay, requires the least amount of work, okay? Not investing in Bitcoin companies, because when we make an investment in a company, that's just the beginning. That's just the start of what's to come, all right? And I would challenge you to go to nearly every company that we've invested in, or every company, and do a reference check. That's what you do as a founder. That's what you do as a young entrepreneur. Go around, talk to some of their portfolio companies. Hey, what's it like working with Muzz? You know what I mean? See what they say. If they say he's a rent-sucking, blood-leeching, pig snarling, sacrificing person, then don't call me, But likely they will give you a very good feedback of Muzz tries his goddamnedest, okay? And you know what? He's been very helpful to us, and the money was nice, and he helped us complete our first fundraise, or was able to say something good, right? You have to check references, right? And that requires a lot of work. And I don't know why Jimmy's talking about crypto anything, because we're not investing in any crypto nothings, okay? So none of this has to do with dumping tokens. When we make an investment, we literally can't sell it. Okay, so just think about that. If we invest $250,000, let's just say, into a startup, we are married, we are pregnant, okay, with you, all right? So we are not going anywhere. There's no, our tokens got released and now we get to dump it. We are there, right? There might be some secondary markets or liquidity options way down the line, but we are starting right there from the beginning. And I can't say that every VC is nice, okay, or good fathers, husbands, neighbors, whatever, all right? But I know that what we do, and at least the Bitcoin venture capital community, which is very small and nascent at this point, but I think that they will all get very good references from all of these portfolio companies.
All right, if that's the case, then I should really point out the incentive problem here. Okay, if you're a startup and someone calls you about one of your VCs and you trash them, what do you think's gonna happen? What do you think's gonna happen? They're gonna go talk to the VC and say, they said some bad stuff about you, so we're passing. And then the VC's gonna come in and say, you said what about me? You said shit about me? Fuck you, right? That's what's going to happen. So the incentive for everybody involved is to say nice things, even if you're lying. Now, I agree with Muzz that every one of his portfolio companies will be saying good things about him. But that's just the nature of the beast. No one likes to challenge VCs. No one likes to challenge them because they hold the money, right? This is the same thing with a lot of investment bankers. We saw Elizabeth Warren talking to Jamie Dimon in Congress yesterday and saying, oh, he's right. He's she's very nice to him in many ways because he controls the money. Okay, whoever controls the purse strings, you're going to get very good feedback on every time. And in a sense, he may be a very good VC and do all of this stuff. He also may not. But whatever he is, the portfolio company is strictly incentivized to say good things because you are going to get screwed over in this industry, especially a small one like Bitcoin, where he's going to talk to everybody. They're all afraid of offending VCs for that reason. And this is the dynamic that you see with a lot of VCs, right? We've seen the Raoul Pauls and the Mark Cubans come into Bitcoin and say, oh, you know what? These guys are so rude. I'm going to trash Bitcoin on Twitter, and that's going to be their downfall. This is their mentality. This is the VC mentality, that they are the kingmakers, that they are the reason why these companies succeed.
Click this,
it's not true.
Where's the clicker?
Let's wrap it up. Give Muzz a little second here to rebuttal.
All right, now listen. All right, you all talk about hyper-Bitcoinization and kumbaya and everything else in the world that's going on, okay? So we are actually enabling this, unlike Jimmy, who's really not doing anything. All right, so some exchange comes out of Brazil and says, hey, we're selling $1 million worth of Bitcoin every month. We're gonna add Lightning. We're gonna do this partnership. This is a real business. We're onboarding this entire country. We need $300,000. This is what we wanna do. We're gonna get a user acquisition campaign. We're blah, and then we fund it and we help them and we actually work with them, okay? I'm not slaughtering any pigs there, okay? And that leads to the hyper-Bitcoinization. innovation. That's what's leading it, because it's the same story in Australia. It's the same story in France. It's the same story everywhere, okay? We are taking the companies that are onboarding, okay, the on-ramps and off-ramps of exchanges, right? The infrastructure companies, the IBEXs, the Breezes, the LSPs, the Thea, multi-sig technology, and we are helping these companies. Can Jimmy say that as he signs a book?
Okay, and that's it for question number 2. Now we're going to question number 3.
He keeps getting the last word. I don't know.
Well, no, he doesn't.
I love Jimmy. We've been talking about this privately for a long time.
Actually, I think y'all both have spoken the same amount of time.
Yeah, probably.
Okay. But Jimmy, I want to know, can't VCs provide more than just financial? I mean,
Well, that's a perspective that they want that's a spin that they put on everything, and that's what they would like for you to believe, that they add so much value that they deserve, this much equity and all that stuff. And like, to go back to Muzz's example, there's an exchange in Brazil that wants to hyper accelerate their growth with more capital, and certainly they could do that, but if they're actually a business, how much is he adding other than like scaling up a little faster? Because if they're a profitable business, they can expand organically, right? He's just accelerating it. He's feeding the pig more so that they'll get fattened faster, right? That's the VC game. That's always been the thing. And they want you to believe that they're adding all of this value, that they're helping you find stuff, that you're some naive person, and that they're the wise old wizened person that's seen it all, and that they can give you really great advice because 80% of their portfolio companies have failed. Yeah, that doesn't really make sense, does it? But that's the argument that they give. But no one wants to challenge VCs because they control the purse strings. The tech journals don't want to challenge them. Any people in government, they look like they're not innovating or not allowing innovation. But really, this is like debt-fueled growth. That's what this is, and it's toxic because you have debt. And a lot of people don't think of VC money as debt, but it is. They get the liquidation preference. They get all of these like rights, pro forma rights, and all this other stuff that make it so that if you succeed, they get a large chunk, right? It's much better, in my opinion, and much healthier for any economy if companies grow organically, based on profit, based on reality, based on the market wanting what you want, instead of underpricing your competition or going on an acquisition spree or whatever. These are all common things, by the way, that companies do when they get VC money, especially in later stages. It's not adding value. It's just eliminating competition, right? It's becoming more of a monopoly. It's building more moats. It's getting regulators to be on your side and so on. So, I mean, like, I don't want to be too hard on Muzz, because I think he really does have his heart in the right place. And I do believe that he's trying to add a lot of value, and to a large degree, he probably does. But the institution of venture capital is fiat at its core. It is bringing consumption forward. It is scaling up in an unnaturally fast way and getting a lot of people involved that are going to be rent seekers. And I don't think it's a good thing.
It's hard to do things alone, okay? It's hard to do anything alone. So when you're building and scaling a company, you can go Jimmy's route, and you can give the middle finger and not take any VCs and not deal with anyone. But ultimately, they're a partner. They're there to help you, and it's not just the capital, okay? Because we were talking about an exchange in Brazil in our example here. And by the way, once we get started, we're fixing their liquidity provider problem. We're saving them 100 bips. We're increasing their margins. We're giving their customers better fees by switching APIs. How does their business work? What do I know? I just have specialized knowledge in that exact business and tons of other countries, right? What value can I possibly add to them who don't do this every day, right? Oh, they need a banking partnership. Oh, they want to expand to the US. How are they going to get MTLs in 50 states? Jimmy thinks, oh, well, they could just sit there and do it themselves and Google it, right? Or how else would they figure it out, right? But when you bring on somebody who's there to work with you, right, not against you, okay, I don't own them. I can't give them any kind of marching orders or anything. All I can do is help them and try my darndest to do so.
Okay, I'm going to try to keep this on time for Tone. I know what it is running a conference when they start getting behind. So we got 2 minutes left, 1 minute for a final comment, starting with you, Mose.
I'm sorry that you had bad experiences with VCs, and that has led you to this really negative outlook on the entire industry. By the way, VCs get trashed in tech journals and magazines all the time. SoftBank, I mean, how much crap did they take for WeWork going bankrupt and everything, and all these failed IPOs, and every time one of these, you know, they have a poor exit, okay, it's always written about. So they take plenty of flack for it, and the scorecard shows it. Okay, so after this is all said and done, the Bitcoin VCs will be up against each other and other VCs and Bitcoin itself, right? And it will have to make sense. So I wish that you had a good experience. I wish that you had a VC who was your emotional support animal and was there to help you and listen and add value, so that you didn't think that they were all rent-seeking, blood-sucking losers.
Jimmy?
Well, you know, I get it. Muzz is trying to provide value, and he's trying the best he can. But I got to tell you, I've been in a lot of startups. I've dealt with a lot of VCs. I know how they operate, and I know the tricks that they pull, like pulling an offer sheet right before you're about to go, and you know, saying that they'll lead and then not doing it, and like basically leaving you in a lurch. And that sort of stuff happens all the time. There's really not much check on a VC because they control the purse strings. And this is the big thing about fiat money, is that they who control the purse strings controls you. And I would hate for the many of you that will someday start Bitcoin businesses to be beholden to somebody else, because ultimately that's what causes you to get corrupted. I would rather you stay poor and grow slower. And you know, VCs aren't the only ones that can provide consulting services. There are plenty of other people that can provide that.
Thanks everybody for partaking in this and listening to their thoughts. This was the easiest time I've ever been on stage, but I had to ask 2 questions, 3 questions. Thanks, guys.
Good stuff there.
All right, folks, don't go anywhere. We have a very interesting debate coming up. Thanks for coming. Thanks for coming back after lunch. I hope everybody enjoyed it. So we're going to have another debate. This is a highly contentious issue in the Bitcoin community right now. And I'm going to introduce it by saying that the Bitcoin protocol operates within itself. It is self-regulating and self-referencing. And people have, for many years, believed that they can do things outside of the protocol and tie it into the protocol by putting things in transactions, and somehow they become immutable. And this debate is pro and con, whether or not people should do this. And I'm allowed to interject my opinion, which is people should be free to do anything that's in Bitcoin within the rules. But that doesn't make it what it's claimed to be. And so I do have a position on this issue, and it is in one favor, which should be fairly obvious by the time I'm done talking, which is that the narrative that you can take something outside the Bitcoin protocol and connect it inside the Bitcoin protocol, and then somehow it is protected by the Bitcoin protocol and nothing outside, is absurd. And so I don't believe the narrative that is being sold to unscrupulous or unknowing people believing they're owning something that's either rare or that can be traded around in some immutable way. I can't wait to hear how these guys go back and forth on this. I hope everybody is interested to hear what they're going to say. As you can tell, I have my position. I don't believe anybody should prevent them from doing anything that fits within the protocol, but I don't believe what they're doing is can actually be done with the narrative that I hear out in the world. So I'm really excited. So Tone is going to moderate this one. We've got Giacomo, Dan, William, and who's the fourth guy on this one. G-Money, where are you? Oh, there you are. No, where's the... Oh, there's William. Okay, we got everybody. All right, Tone, take it away, folks.
Oh, Jim, need your mic. I'm going to sit closer for the camera so they don't have to, they can zoom in easier. All right, hey, everyone, thank you so much for sticking around. This is going to be super, super interesting. Actually, where's Zezo? Zezo? No mind, I'll get him later. A little more time on the clock. We're gonna need a little more time. It's okay. Let's get it up to 40. So this is going to be an interesting debate. We've been actually debating whether to debate this topic, but it is an important topic. I'm going to let the speakers introduce themselves, and then we're going to get into it from there. I'm going to kick it off from that side with G-Money. The button.
Censorship.
Hello.
They got censored.
Okay, now it's working. Yo, can you hear me now? You good?
I know. It's like the
Welcome.
shirt he's
Yeah,
wearing.
I
It's
know.
perfect with the microphone operation.
I got rug pulled already. I don't know. No, it's beautiful to be in a room of dominant DNA. That's what I see out here. It's dominant DNA who is like not willing to bend their knee. So, anyways, my name is G-Money. I do rug pull radio on Rumble. I'm the conspiracy, Rare Pepe, Bitcoin is a weapon guy. Okay, so some of you may get triggered, and that's okay. I'll give you a hug later.
I've been in the space almost 10 years. From the corporate side or career side, was the first product manager at blockchain.com. Used to lead marketing at Kraken. And in terms of personal brand, I've written a lot of content on the basics of Bitcoin, how Bitcoin mining works, and cover different topics like the security budget and whatnot.
Hey, I'm Will. I used to work on Bitcoin Core and Core Lightning, but now I do other stuff like Nostr, but still interested in Bitcoin and in the technicals.
Hello, I'm Giacomo. I'm an underwear model. And in a spare time, I participated to some companies in Bitcoin since 2013, like Green, that is now Blockstream, and others. I had a research laboratory in Milan, which is the place where the Bolt protocol was born, and also the place where the open timestamps and RGB protocols were born. RGB is interesting because it's one of those things that we may discuss about. And I'm still advisor of a few companies like Relay and Ocean and others. And I do stuff, but mostly underwear model.
So this is going to be great. So Giacomo actually sent one of my favorite tweets of all time about shitcoining, and I'll let you think about what it was, but I'm going to mention it later. So I'm going to go back to the corner. I'm going to start with G-Money and Dan, and I need you guys to make the case for why speculating on assets built on top of Bitcoin is potentially good for Bitcoin. And there is a case to be made. For example, the Bitcoin Core developers, myself included as well, like completely ignored Ethereum and didn't think it would be valuable at all. And while we all agree how bad it is, we can't deny the fact that all these ERC20s drove the price of Ethereum higher, and this could have happened to Bitcoin. But even if it happened to Bitcoin, would it have been good for Bitcoin? And that's what the other side will talk about. So can you guys make the case for why shitcoining on Bitcoin is potentially good for Bitcoin?
So most of Bitcoin adoption has occurred through speculative cycles. This is undeniable. 2013, 2017, 2021, we see a giant surge of people buying Bitcoin because their buddy told them about it, not because they read the Bitcoin standard. Most bought it because they wanted to make money. Now, later down the road, they read content by great Bitcoin content creators that then keep them retained as a hodler. So it's actually more a retention metric that the educators are playing rather than an acquisition metric. So the acquisition metric is speculative. People want to speculate, and Bitcoin represents a very fun speculative casino game for a lot of people. When we look at Bitcoin's casino compared to Ethereum's casino, Ethereum has a lot of other games. Yield farming, NFTs, all these other speculative mechanisms to pull people in and introduce them to Ethereum for the first time. I actually encountered this at NFT NYC because I like to go outside the Bitcoin community and go see how these other folks think about their crypto assets. And so when I went to NFT NYC, I talked to a couple of Ethereum folks, and they're like, "Yeah, I bought an NFT for 0.1 ETH, and I flipped it for 0.3." And I'm like, "Okay, cool, congratulations. Like, what do you like about Ethereum? What do you think about proof of work versus proof of stake? Or what do you think about Ethereum's monetary policy?" And they're like, "I don't even know what those words mean." And you're like, at first you kind of laugh and scoff, and you're like, "Ha, the silly Ethereum NFT people, they're dumb." And then you realize most of the people who own Bitcoin are probably the same way. Most of them probably have never, ever read the white paper. They've probably never read the Bitcoin standard. They probably don't even understand some of the basics of how it works. And so the funny part, though, is that they now own ETH, and they think in an ETH standard. They're talking about flipping an NFT for 0.1 ETH to 0.3, and now they own ETH. They don't hold Bitcoin. And so I saw this phenomenon myself, and that's why I think that speculative assets on top of Bitcoin is ultimately good for Bitcoin. I'm not going to sit here and tell someone to go buy a BRC20 token. Like, I clearly do not think that it is a good investment. But people will speculate. We cannot stop people from speculating. It's human nature.
Giovanni, you want to add to that?
Yeah, so I like to take a step back and look at Bitcoin as a holistic thing and figure out what is the problem we're trying to solve. Okay, we know we're fighting an entrenched enemy that has been around for thousands of years in some degree, okay? And so if we think about it, we've got the central bankers, the fiat cartel, right? That is pretty much the top of the food chain, okay? But then they have their henchmen, right? They've got their foot soldiers, which is Wall Street, okay? Wall Street is the foot soldier of the central bank, okay? And so not only are they stealing through us through inflation, they're stealing and looting from us through the rigged markets, through hours of trading, through bells and whistles and stuff. And so we have to figure out a way to transition out of that system. Okay, we need a peer-to-peer asset exchange system that removes, okay, the $25 trillion Wall Street vultures. Okay, I don't think anybody in here would be sad if Jamie Dimon was penniless on the streets. Okay, and they were talking about it earlier, but who owns stocks in here, real quick? Who owns stocks? Okay, how many of you guys actually own the stock certificates physically and take custody of it?
Nice.
One person.
Nice.
One person. And so what we see is those guys have your equities, have your assets, where they're leveraging, they're gambling, and so there's a better way to do this. Now, my position is more second layer scalable counterparty stuff, but that's at least my view of it.
All right, we'll get to the counterparty stuff as well. All right, do you guys want to counter that view?
Yes. So the problem, imagine the internet. Imagine you're an advocate for the internet in the early 90s. So you know that the internet will be used for many things, including speculations on domains, which is fine. People speculate, gamble on domains. They will use it also to share information about other investment opportunities, and also they will use it to scam people. The internet was a huge cesspool of scam, and it still is. So if you are an advocate in the early internet, I think you can accept the fact that many people will use the internet to scam people, to do Ponzi schemes, to do crazy gamble, to do a lot of stuff that doesn't make any sense. But what you have on the other side is the fact that you are protected by three things, mostly. One, the fact that the cargo cult mentality of the internet can be used to promote stuff beyond their fair value. For example, if you are still in the 90s, everybody that will start the business, whatever, they will put a .com at the end, and they will scam people like pet.com. They didn't have any pet food, but with the .com, they could scam people. So now, if you're very passionate and very interested in e-commerce, and you see the potential, you feel compelled to go around and say, guys, e-commerce is great, but not every company that puts a .com in front of the name will actually deliver a good e-commerce experience like Amazon. Not everything is Amazon. So with Bitcoin, we feel in a similar situation. We have this technology that helps Bitcoin to scarcity, which is decentralized. Not every use case that pretends to have something similar to Bitcoin will offer anything more. So you see people that, for example, you have some, let's talk even about protocols I like Liquid, RGB. Some guy is coming with a new stock offer. with a new like private equity deal. The users will be skeptical about the deal itself, but now we say, oh, it's a liquid. And so in the brain of the people, there will be, oh, so this must be as valuable as Bitcoin because it's leveraging the same technology. They don't have any idea what this technology is. So the solution to this problem is just time. Right now, if you open a new .com website, everybody has a .com website, so that's not a competitive advantage anymore. So you as an internet advocate don't have to spend your time in making this difference. But in Bitcoin, we're still very early. So everybody that is basically orange washing their offering with some kind of mysterious Bitcoin technology is selling that as a premium. Even friends, like even some friends or Liquid and RGB, that stuff that without this fake technology will be worth nothing, with the fake technology nonsense, it acquires value. The second problem is the problem of scarce resources. In the internet, you didn't have a lot of scarce resources. In Bitcoin, we have many. We have block space, we have the bandwidth of the node. So if we really want to scam people, I prefer, if the best idea would be to scam people on your MySQL database. But if you really want to emulate Bitcoin technology somehow, please, as a Bitcoin maximalist, I prefer if you scam people with another technology, because at least while you scam people, you don't consume the same scarce resources that somebody may try to use to escape from dictatorship or other kind of more noble use cases. And the third problem is basically that in the very early 80s and the late 80s, there was a protocol war. So there was many different alternatives to the internet. So speculations and frauds and scams and lies could creep in at the protocol level to instruct bad practices. Like the ISO organization was trying to change IPv version 4 into IP protocol version 5, in order to have like more IP addresses and to centralize the network. The network reacted by basically repelling this kind of attack. In Bitcoin, we're still in the same phase. If you have a scammer that is just selling like I don't know, one coin, is a scam that don't really bother Bitcoiners much, because yeah, you sell one coin, you scam people, but you are not trying to change Bitcoin at the technical level while you sell, you scam. So I think these are the three main vectors of the three main reasons for the basically repulsion that we have toward this kind of aggressively speculative use cases.
Yeah, what you said also. No, I'd be very concerned about these high time preference, ways of thinking about Bitcoin, in sense of like, well, if we're not providing these solutions, then other chains are going to get all the attention. They're going to get all of the pumps and all that stuff. But we got to remind ourselves why we're here, and maybe adopt a more low time preference thinking on these things. Because specifically, Bitcoin technically was not designed to support the use cases in terms of like trading assets. It's very optimized for just standard transactions and kind of boring stuff. And the boring stuff is actually really important, and it's okay. And maybe we don't really need to focus on these other speculative use cases with other technology and other protocols would be more optimized to do that. Like you could do file sharing over email, but we don't, because it just doesn't really make sense. It's not really designed to do that. And this has always been my perspective on Bitcoin, is like, let's just make sure it's working and working well for the use case that it's designed for, and not think about like short-term gains and high time preference thinking.
And I had two follow-on points. One would be around, and I think this is kind of a common area we might share, which is that Bitcoin's block space, of course, is scarce. We knew long-term that only the highest value transactions were going to be on L1. Everything else gets pushed up to different L2s. Arguably, highly speculative assets that are worth a lot, people would be willing to pay a transaction fee to move that. We weren't going to have like the global south transacting on layer 1. This just wasn't going to be a thing in the future. So I think that was kind of a short-lived time period where people from Argentina and Venezuela could transact in L1. That was never going to be the case long-term because of that scarce block space. Increased demand for that, whatever that demand may be, was going to push up transaction fees. And this has been known about for a very long time, and we all kind of agree that this is how Bitcoin's going to scale. When it comes to the morality of different transaction types, I'm old enough to remember that Satoshi Dice, a application, was a majority of Bitcoin transactions back in the day, 2011, 2012. I forget how, I think 2012, it ended like 13. Then you had Silk Road, and then you had 2013 speculative cycle. Almost all of that transacting, that wasn't to buy coffee, that wasn't to like invest in a company, that was primarily highly speculative drug use, or buying and selling Bitcoin on a spot exchange. And so when we look at a majority of Bitcoin transactions, they're not these wholly, perfect third world country transactions for coffee. It's mainly Western speculators. And I think those, obviously, like if it was just speculation, there's nothing behind it, there's no sound money behind it, then it would go to zero. People come for the speculation and stay for the sound money. Most people leave, and that's why we see the bear market go down, is because a lot of people just were in it for a quick cash grab. But really, I think that's the important role of educators in the Bitcoin space, is they go, hey, look, you came in because of speculation, but go read the Bitcoin standard, and this is why you should hodl onto it. This is why you should believe in it. This is the problem that it's solving. It's more of like, I don't wish that speculation was the way that people came in. I wish it was the opposite. I wish they would go read and understand the problems with the existing financial system, but most come in that way. And so I kind of view it as like a sinner relationship where it's like, I'm like, yes, you've sinned, that's okay. And I think some folks are like, you can't sin at all and you have to go about it like a more pure way.
All right, quick comment, and I want to move on to counterparty.
Yeah, I would just say that, the scams and the degenerates is like a natural filter for inferior DNA. So if you got scammed, you got rug pulled, like that's part of the learning process, part of the pain process. And so it's a natural filter in how we move forward.
All right, so we're going to stay on that side, and then after this, we're going to go in the opposite direction, and then I'm going to try to save some time for questions. So Giovanni, so you're a big fan of Counterparty. We see the Pepe shirts. Now, I first heard of Counterparty from listening to the Bitcoin Uncensored podcast. Shout out to them. Raise your hand if you know what Bitcoin Uncensored podcast was. And keep your hand up if you've heard every single episode. All right. A lot of hands. That's still a challenge. By the way, I keep telling John stuff. I have every single episode on audio in a zip file. I still don't know what to do with them yet, but there'll be some kind of a 10-year anniversary.
Don't inscribe them, please don't.
So they were, for some crazy reason, they were fans of Counterparty. And while I do credit them for helping me on my Bitcoin maximalist path back in those 2014 days, and Counterparty never made sense to me. And the first question that I was like dumbfounded by, why on earth would you destroy your Bitcoin for another token? Like, it never made sense to me, right? Like, I like Bitcoin second layer solutions like Liquid. I'm a huge fan of Liquid. RGB is good as well because they don't have their own token. To me, like, whenever I describe Liquid, I describe it as a casino. It's like when you come to the casino, you don't gamble with dollars. You convert them into casino tokens that are pegged to the dollar. And when you finish gambling, you leave the casino, you convert them back to dollars. That's how I describe Liquid Bitcoin, in a very similar way. But for some reason, Counterparty decided to create their own token. Maybe they were ahead of their time. So can you make an argument for a Bitcoin layer with its own token, and then we'll see what these guys have to say about it.
Yeah, and props to you for actually bringing up someone that represents that community, because it's such a forgotten community that is so bold and like loving and just a great group of people that are all Bitcoin maximalists, by the way. I'm a Bitcoin maximalist. It's okay, just a thing. But it's called proof of burn. And if you understand sacrifice, okay, there's some spiritual element to that. And so yes, over 2,100 Bitcoin were burned to a provably unspendable Bitcoin address that created this shitcoin called XCP, okay? And if you think about that, no devs got special treatment, no CEO got special treatment. There wasn't like an ICO where you got to, centralize a majority of the stake in the coins for a certain person. It was only people that believed in this technology got access to this token. Now, this token you can still buy, but it was different than any other shitcoin out there, and it had an immaculate conception, right? Like, if you could think of a way to create some coin, like burning Bitcoin is like, wow, that's like mind-blowing. Like, someone would actually burn their Bitcoin for this thing. And so, yeah, it had this really crazy immaculate conception, kind of similar to Bitcoin in a decentralized way. And so, yeah, I mean, that's kind of the basics of the start of this program. And so a lot of people don't know, like, the first NFTs were on Bitcoin. Like, Ethereum stole the open source code from Counterparty to like put in their smart contracts. Like, this, like, Rare Pepe was done in 2016 before all these shitty kitties and punks and all the apes and all the other bullshit. So Rare Pepe, like, literally the meme of Bitcoin is Pepe, right? And so I'm here to represent that. I want people to like expand their mind and thinking like all NFTs are a scam. Like, I think we're kind of in a circular firing squad when there's like this huge enemy that's attacking all of us, and we're like fighting over like little nuances where we can like pick a protocol that works for everybody that's scalable on layer 2, that maybe doesn't bloat layer 1. Okay, so let's talk about the solution. I'm all up for the best man winning, right? But let's find a solution and not just keep fighting with amongst each other, because Bitcoiners can get together and do a lot of good, but the Udis of the world, those guys are shitcoiners. I'm not fans of those guys, but there are solutions out there. It's been around for 8 years now, so let's figure it out.
Yeah, for me, I'm more of a fan of let all the L2s bloom. You've got L2s with tokens like Counterparty, Rootstock, Stacks. You've got Liquid. It's a side chain. Each one has its own design parameters and different trade-offs. You've got the peg out problem with Liquid, which is basically a giant multi-sig. There's other game theoretic problems with ones that have tokens. And I'm not going to sit here and tell you to buy a token versus buying Bitcoin. You should buy Bitcoin. But when we look at how to build L2s, I think recently a lot of folks have realized Lightning is not going to be a catch-all solution. Lightning is a great piece of technology. I love Lightning, but Lightning's not going to do everything. Each L2 has its own design parameters where I think Liquid might be better for this or Lightning. And so I'm a fan of let all the experimentation bloom. I know there might be some scams or there might be some worthless tokens that are created, but at least we gave it a shot and tried it versus, we have a kind of an impending crisis here on L1. I mean, as transaction fees go up, L2s have to work out. This is also happening over on Ethereum, by the way, too. They're exploring stuff like ZK rollups and other ways to scale. So Bitcoin is going through the same growing pains, and that's where I'm let's try out all the things. So I'm more kind of agnostic.
Yeah, I mean, I think L2 is the obvious way to go on Bitcoin. There are some protocols who are trying to put data within the Bitcoin blockchain, and it's just horrible. It's just horrible. Bitcoin was not designed to do that, and a lot of the early development was specifically trying to set up incentives within Bitcoin Core so that people wouldn't do this. Like in the early days, people would create these massive multi-sig transactions. Like right now, you can get the entire Bitcoin white paper out of the UTXO set. And the reason why that's a problem is because a lot of that is unprunable. So once you have a certain number of UTXOs, those can't be pruned. So you're just stuck with that. And then if that is growing over time, then that is really not good for prune nodes because you're going to hit a limit where you just can't run your Bitcoin node anymore. So back in the days, they made the op return standard because they were trying to get people to not do these alternative data storage techniques in multisig. So a lot of it is just trying to discourage it. So I think it's inevitable it's going to be around, but the least egregious would be just putting some hash in an op return, and that's fine. I don't know exactly what they're putting in the counterparty outputs, but as long as they're not putting giant images into the witness data, which is just egregious.
I guess how many bytes would you allow?
I mean, the thing that everyone is it's so funny, the whole argument about the number of bytes allowed in the op return. In some sense, it doesn't matter. That's just a policy decision that a node and a miner can set, and that can be opinionated. But the thing we can all agree on is the consensus rules. So imagine if you created a mining pool that prioritized inscriptions, and people who believe in that ideology can actually direct their hash power toward that mining pool, and that's fine. I just don't. And that's how the system is still working. There's going to be other mining pools that are going to prioritize other transactions. But yeah, this whole argument over how many bytes in an op return is just kind of silly to me.
Yeah, let me surprise you with a shout out to Counterparty, and especially the part that you don't like, Proof of Burn. I think that comparatively, it was a great and very humble and very honest idea. So the first objection you can have is you don't even need a token. So you can do papers like with colored coins, like Ordinal people are doing now, without any new token. But then Counterparty tried to be a little bit more ambitious, and they tried to extend, before Ethereum, they tried to extend the scripted power of Bitcoin into this second layer. So now they needed, for example, a share, a Bitcoin represented share, that could give you dividend. Now, the Bitcoin scripting system cannot enforce the fact that this counterparty share will give you Bitcoin dividend, because the Bitcoin protocol, rightly so, they don't know about counterparty. So you cannot do dividend payment enforcement. So what they did is, okay, we have to create another token, which is just like a Bitcoin, but we cannot use Bitcoin because we need to enforce on the second layer. What they did was, instead of printing our own money, which will destroy all the honest incentives of the team, because every time you print a token, you will transform your business from technology innovation into like junk shilling. It will be automatic. When you print money, the most remunerative thing to do is just to shield the money you are printing. And every other consideration about technology will just go to hell immediately. So counterparty people gave up the very scary power of printing money, and they said, we need a new token. We are not going to do an ICO. We are not going to print it to ourselves. If you have a Bitcoin, you burn it and you get a counterparty coin. I think that this is actually a second best solution. If you really want to create another infrastructure, the first best is to have Bitcoin going there and going back, like a sidechain. But the sidechain is hard to do in a trustless way. Like Liquid is centralized, the Rootstock is centralized. It's very hard to do a trustless peg out. So if you cannot do that, if you want to be trustless and you cannot do two-way peg, a second good solution is to do a one-way peg, where you burn a Bitcoin and you get this other side coin that cannot dilute Bitcoin because you destroyed some demand by moving it on the chain, but you also destroyed some supply. So the price of the counterparty side coin cannot go higher than Bitcoin. It cannot suck liquidity out of Bitcoin. It can only go lower if there is no demand, so you are wrecked, or it can stay the same, and so it's basically an economical sidechain. So I think that was actually a great idea. And I will actually, as everybody that wants to create a new chain that has a token, the first goal should be to have a sidechain if possible. But if that's not possible in your security model, a second best will actually be to do burn a chain, which makes sense. For example, for RGB, we consider to do RGBTC. So you use RGB to represent Bitcoin, so you benefit for privacy and stuff. And my first idea was, let's do proof of burn. You create an RGB token that represents the fact that you destroyed some Bitcoin. And then my colleagues were saying, yeah, but nobody will buy this stuff because it cannot go up, can only go down compared to Bitcoin. Yes, that's the point. If the technology is so much better, then there will be more demand. People will buy this because it will stay the same and it will not damage Bitcoin. If the technology is not so much better, this will just die. It will just go to zero, which we should just say honestly. We don't have any incentive to sell it because we don't get any money from the ICO. So in my opinion, I have many criticisms to Counterparty. They try to do everything on chain that cannot scale. The image of a frog cannot really be meaningful on chain because that will create scalability problems. On RGB, you can send the image of the frog directly peer-to-peer. So I think that frogs scale better on RGB. But one thing that I really love about Counterparty is the proof of burn thing. If you cannot do a sidechain, that's the second best. Sorry, Michael Saylor, but it's the second best.
All right, so, oh man, I got a bunch of topics. But I remember the funniest story about RGB where like one of your developers got really upset that a bunch of shitcoins were starting up on RGB. It's like, well, I don't want that. We have to remove that. And like, one of the other was, what do you think we've been building here for the whole year? So that was a really funny story.
Yeah, so the real story...
Real quick, because we got to move on.
Very quick. The story about RGB is never about tokens. Nobody in the RGB team cares about token very much. It's just a scam. We are scamming people about tokens, but we want to do something that may be useful. This is a design called client-side validation that we think it will be useful for Bitcoin eventually. So we are just getting attention and funding for this token idea, which is pure bullshit. So RGB is a scam in order to basically develop a new technology that Bitcoin itself may actually use in the future.
Okay, so one more quick topic, and then I do want to get to something you're really dying to talk about. I'm just going to say one word, and I'll let you guys just talk about it for a minute. Ordinals.
Retarded. Over.
Okay, done. Next.
I think ordinals are fine. I think inscriptions are retarded.
Okay. We're going to, okay, I might have a follow-up question. Okay.
Sorry, let me recover some of my minutes that I gave up. My problem with Ordinals is not even spam of inscription, it's more like privacy and fungibility. Ordinal is the new version of a colored coin scheme, imagined in 2014, that creates a new heuristic to do on-chain analysis, and it's bad for privacy and it's bad for fungibility. So even if there was no spam, like in inscription, Ordinals alone would still be very, very bad.
What about rare Satoshis, like the first Satoshi after the halving or something?
It doesn't exist. Satoshis die in any transaction, a new Satoshi born. If you want to create a new imaginary scheme to say that this Satoshi is that Satoshi, you are creating a new anti-privacy heuristics. It's like gold. You don't know if this atom of gold is the same in this bullion and in this bullion. So you say, okay, now let's say that the first atom of the first bullion entering the melting facility is the first atom of the first bullion exiting. It's arbitrary, and you are basically creating this stuff that will create a new heuristics to de-anonymize people on chain. So it's really retarded.
Quick comment on rare Satoshis?
I mean, I think they're just kind of like harmless fun. I think there are concerns about fungibility. Whether this will be an actual issue is like to be seen, but it just seems kind of just like a fun thing you can do with your Satoshis and probably gonna not be that important in the future.
I wouldn't buy them, but if someone wants to buy them, they're free to buy them. And I'm a free market advocate. I mean, that's why I fell in love with Bitcoin, as I studied finance in undergrad during the 2008 financial crisis. I saw the problem with money was trust, but the core root of my upbringing was around, Austrian School of Economics, free market ideas. If people want to buy and sell rare sats and it's a made-up, ordinals are essentially a made-up ordering of Satoshis, if people want to buy that, I don't care. It's their free market activity that they're free to do. If people want to buy and sell JPEGs or anything else, I consider these all free market activities. I mean, my neighbor might have pink flamingos that I find fucking atrocious, but like, I'm not going to go argue that they don't deserve the right to like buy pink flamingos. I think most people have pretty poor taste in general. But like, this isn't like a morality thing. I believe that I'm not a huge advocate of a lot of the stuff on there, but I believe in someone's right to be able to buy it.
And a quick word on ordinals?
Yeah, it's a free market, but they're retarded. But one thing I'd like to say, who believes in like tokenization on Bitcoin though? Can we agree on that? Like tokenization
on Bitcoin?
Yes, to some degree.
Maybe in 1 century.
Okay, because Max Kaiser talked about this, right? With like the energy bond in El Salvador. Like when that comes out, I want to be able to buy that bond in El Salvador. And I want a way to do it. I don't want to go to my bank and like wire money to some El Salvadorian bank. I want to pay in Bitcoin with a token. And Max Kaiser said he was going to tokenize the energy bond. And then I'm going to pay a dividend in fiat or like, a shitcoin or a stablecoin or something, right? Like that's how it's probably supposed to work in the future, where you can buy the bond in Bitcoin anywhere in the world and you can get, your dividends back on a system that has already been developed for 8 years and it's got cute frogs. Just saying.
All right, so one quick topic, and we're going to go a little bit different, but there's just no other place to fit it in. I was on your podcast probably about 3-4 months ago, and at the end of the podcast, you guys asked me, Tone, what do you think of Soft Wars, the book by Jason Lowery that's now been banned? And it's a similar, I answered it, and I got the similar reaction to what happened when Seyfettin on his podcast asked me, Tone, what do you think of Plan B's stock-to-flow model? This was like 3-4 years ago before it failed. And I said, I'm not a fan of it. And he was like, what? And then I had to explain my position as to why I wasn't a fan of it. And the same thing happened here. When you asked me about software, I gave you an answer you didn't expect. I said, I don't really care for that book. And my reasoning was that, yes, he's making an argument that Bitcoin can be used as a weapon, and the United States should get the head start on properly using Bitcoin as that weapon. And my reasoning is the first time I ever talked about the topic, by the way, and it was only on your podcast. And I said, well, Jason Lowery comes from the military. He's in the military. So he's coming from the viewpoint that the military is a good thing, and therefore the military should apply Bitcoin to what they do. But I come from the perspective that the US military is a bad thing that's causing more problems in the world than good. So I'm not in a rush to help the US military use Bitcoin as a weapon. So I'm not on that page. So I know you wanted to talk about the subject a little bit, and then we'll see what the other panelists think. This is a little bit of a curveball question. So take a minute.
Yeah, and so I do believe the book Software is probably the most important writing since the Satoshi White Paper, okay? And so what I want to talk about a little bit is, when we have time here, is like Bitcoin is digital 1776, okay? Has anybody read Barlow's Declaration of Independence in Cyberspace? Anybody? Okay, you guys all need to go do your homework. It'll take you 5 minutes. Go look up John Perry Barlow, Declaration of Independence in Cyberspace, okay? He talks about this domain in cyberspace that governments have no control over, okay? The power is with we the people, okay? And if you think about counterinsurgency and insurgency, we are fighting a deeply entrenched insurgency. Insurgency can be defined as shadow government. Now, a couple years ago, you guys would have thought it was freaking crazy. Now, maybe not so much, okay? And so what is counterinsurgency? Well, funny enough, there's a guide that was put out the same month and year as the Genesis block, and it was abbreviated COIN, Counterinsurgency Guide, okay? And this guide, the definition of COIN, is a joint military and civilian effort to defeat and contain insurgency and its root causes. Okay, we all know what the root cause of a lot of problems in society are, and that is the fiat money, okay? And so what I'm saying is we need to take action. We need to stop talking and take action, okay? And so there's this funny bit, who's seen Swingers? Who's seen the movie Swingers, right, in Vegas, right? So like Vince Vaughn is talking to his buddy Mikey who's trying to hit on a chick, and so Bitcoiners, this is like the element, okay? You all, okay, are like these bears with these fangs and these teeth, and like the central bankers are like this little bunny, and we're like sitting here like batting it around, and we don't know how to kill this bunny, right? This bunny is like just sitting there, we've got fangs and teeth, and we don't know how to kill this thing because we've been domesticated for so long that we don't know how to kill this stupid bunny, and it's just sitting there. And so anyways, we have the power, we have to take that power, and it is within us to decide that. I get a little excited, sorry.
I don't know if mine will be as passionate as that, but so I mean, there were some early theories in the early Bitcoin community and like Bitcoin Talk that Bitcoin was created by the NSA. I don't think it has any legitimacy, but it was an interesting thought experiment of going like, what if they were tasked with building a weapon to destabilize governments by building a currency that they couldn't control? And maybe these researchers, these cryptographers were like, this is actually something that could empower the world, and they leaked it. It's a lab leak, essentially. This virus leaked out of the lab, and that's Bitcoin. So that was an early theory. I don't think it's legitimate, but it's kind of fun to bring up. Yeah, Bitcoin does represent a very important game theoretic chess piece. For example, like the enemy of the enemy is your friend, so Bitcoin is the enemy of the dollar, and China, seeing that, would be wise to buy up Bitcoin. You know, so this is where I think game theoretically Bitcoin can be used as a weapon in terms of economic power, but I don't like to think of Bitcoin as like an aggressive weapon. I think Jason's framing. Also, I don't think Jason is exactly like, people think he's like this genius in the military. He's like a low-level major, and you know, it's kind of a crackpot idea where it's a little extra, like it's too flowery. He also doesn't really do any debates about it, where I find, I don't know, I'm just not a big fan of the book.
Did you read the book?
Okay. I've read the
Let's
book.
avoid the question.
I've read the book, not all of it. I got bored at Alpha, so I don't share your enthusiasm. So I think like, but my problem is that before.
Man, Jimani, you're on your own with that book on this panel so far.
It's
wow.
okay. I'm looking for the lions, not the sheep.
So my problem is that before the book, I've read a great article by developer Adam Gibson, that is developer of Join Market, and he wrote a great article that I really suggest, Proof of Work, a pictorial essay. And he goes, it was a few years ago, and he goes explaining that the proof of work in Bitcoin is similar somehow to the fact that some animals will develop useless structure that are just used to show off how much power and energy they have, so that the predators will not attack or the mate will mate. So the idea that in nature you can show your expense as a symbol of power. That article is very well made, is very well written, is very specific to the role of proof of work inside the creation of digital scarcity and the creation of canonical ordering of transaction. So very Bitcoin specific. And the book from Spaceboy was for me just like the same idea, just blown out of proportion, a little bit less original, a little bit less precise. So I didn't share. But probably the reason I didn't share your enthusiasm is also that I don't really share this theory that within the United States government there is a strong, there's like a duplicity and a strong counterinsurgence part. This is also an idea that goes around a lot, like even I don't know, Alex Jones says that there is like a good deep state and a bad deep state. I'm skeptical for game theory reasons. Even the most pro-Bitcoin congressman gets to be elected because he spends money printed by the Federal Reserve. And the moment Bitcoin will take over the dollar, the spending capability of the federal government will basically go back to 1914 levels. No single politician, no single military guy, especially military guys, they can spend so much because of the printing press. If Bitcoin destroys the printing press, there is no way they can keep spending as they do. So you don't really take out the toy from a kid, making him happy. The kid will cry. So I think that even the bosses of Jason will not be happy when the purchasing power of the printed US dollars will be so low that they have to cut the purchasing power of the US military to pre-World War I levels. So I don't think it's a good representation.
We got 1 minute left, guys. Jimani, real quick.
I would just say one more thing. Power of the government is derived from consent of the governed, okay? We give them that power, okay? We now have the power to say, go fuck yourself, like Elon, right? And so what we have is we have unfuckwithable money. We have unconfiscatable money, okay? Which has never happened in the history of humanity, okay? And if you think about counterinsurgency, insurgency is a battle over legitimacy. Literally, that's the definition. They are legitimate because we give them that consent of legitimacy. If we stop giving them that consent of legitimacy, they are no longer legitimate. The dollar, is it legitimate? Who thinks the dollar is a legitimate piece of paper? Right? We go somewhere else, there's
You're
a
not
different
going to
story.
get hands up in this room.
And so all we need to do is like really just band together in some civil disobedience and take the power back and say no more. They're not going to stop you guys. They stole an election. They injected people with poison. They're poisoning your brains every day on the news media. Okay, you think they're going to stop? Like, hey, look, I hope they stop, but I don't think they're going to stop. Okay, and this is a peaceful revolution. We don't have to bring out the muskets and shoot anybody. All we have to do is say no. And so I think we're missing the point of the entire battlefield. It's not just about money.
All right, thank you. William, you have a thought or quick thought?
I'll pass on that one.
Yeah, passing out. All right, guys. I really wanted to save time for questions, but unfortunately, we did get into that topic. And I think it's good that we got to, say a few words on that topic. Hope you really enjoyed this panel. Let's have one more round of applause. And we're coming up on the finale. By the way, if you're a speaker here and you have never signed that, painting print before, go ahead and sign it because this thing's been being signed the third year in a row. So we're going to maintain it for as long as we can. If you've never signed it, go ahead and, you just hang out here with me. All right, guys, we got one final panel of the day, and then there's going to be the carnivory dinner for those that have a gold bracelet, or if you are certain you're on the list for the carnivory dinner, come and see us over at the registration desk. The carnivory dinner is pretty full at this point. We're just now trying to make sure that we're not over capacity. We're just trying to figure that out. But I don't really have any other major announcements. I'll do some after the panel. But we're going to talk about Ocean. I'm going to let Mir. Is Mir going to moderate? Mir, there you are. Awesome. Go ahead. You haven't been on stage yet, so maybe you can say a few words with your, husband standing behind you and making faces and judging you about it. Here, take mine. And then you're going to lead us into the panel by bringing up some additional panelists. Hopefully they'll show up.
Yeah, I see Luke, I see Lex, and I need Bob. Okay, cool. 1, 2, 3, okay. Everybody's here. Cool, awesome. I see a very nice logo over there. And I'm very excited about this panel. But I took some notes because, of course, I learned about this moderation 1 day ago, probably less. But let's start with that. I'm here with Giacomo. Do you want to present yourself in another amazing way? So if you don't want to add anything, I would say that you forget about the...
So I cannot top the underwear model stuff, so I will
Exactly.
just pass it over.
No, okay, so you can add at least the Plan B initiative.
Yeah, right.
Yeah,
I'm also, right,
you forget
you're right.
about that.
I'm also, yeah, forgot about that. My recent job is also director of the Plan B Network Initiative, which is an initiative we started in Lugano and is now going on all around the world to basically coordinate Bitcoin education all around the world and Bitcoin physical spaces, like you remember the Bitcoin embassies a long time ago. That's the idea, to basically coordinate Bitcoin hacker spaces and houses and other kind of spaces together with good education. We are merging with good Bitcoin initiatives like the Couver Bitcoin, pardon my French, and Summer of Bitcoin and Lugano Plan B Summer School and all this stuff together to do something very, very good. Thank you for remembering.
Yeah, and you decided to talk about your modeling instead of this. Okay, cool. And then we have Luke Dash here. I don't think you need any presentation, but I really like your bio on Twitter, where you say that you are Roman Catholic, you have 8 kids, and now you're CTO of Ocean. And also INTP, right? You had this in your bio. You want to add something else, Luke? Oh, I know you pretty well. Okay, that's good. We are talking later.
The hardest person to moderate
is.
in any panel ever is Luca.
Yeah,
right?
it's Luke.
I think you might have actually left out Bitcoin Core Developer.
Yeah, exactly. I want to be
was a
sure that amazing, you will listen to me. And then we have Bitcoin Mechanic, and Alex is. I also really love your bio on Twitter because you are now the CBO, Chief Boiling for Ocean, right? So what do you do for Ocean now?
Chief Boiling Officer.
Yeah, exactly. A very good definition.
Well, before Ocean came around, I called myself an ocean boiler for fun anyway. Then the ocean pool came around and hired me, and I was like, I don't want to change my bio. So I'll just call myself Chief Boiling Officer, and then I get to say the same thing, Chief Boiling Officer at Ocean. So perfect.
And also I can add that you're an amazing musician. We played together, but I just want to mention that because I think it's important. And then we have Bob.
Thank you.
And then we have Bob. We met recently in South Carolina, right? Because you run a Bitcoin mining there, barefoot mining. You want to add something about your operation there?
Sure. Well, so I am CEO of Barefoot Mining. So I'm an advocate, proponent for what I call horse class mining. I'll talk more about that tomorrow. But basically think about it as kind of the small to medium sized commercial mining and its importance to the Bitcoin ecosystem. And also a proud investor and member of the board of Ocean. So
basically all of these people were at the presentation of Ocean, the launch of Ocean Mining Pool last week in South Carolina, but 1 week has passed and many things happened. So it's not a replica of what we have talked about last week. Everything changed so far. So Giacomo, you addressed the topic of censorship before. I don't think I want to go too deep on that, but one brief things I want to clarify with you is about the fact that you talk about filtering is different, very different from censorship. And now we have not 25, the version 25. Do you think it is enough efficient to filter spam, or you have different opinions?
That's a good question. I hinted at that in the presentation. I actually agree pretty much with Luke and Mechanic, never discussed with Bob this, about the fact that this choice to use knots is completely legit, and the policy of knots, they are ethically sound and reasonable. And my strong point in my presentation was that conflating it with censorship is entirely dishonest or clueless, or both. So I'm very strong opinionated on that point. This kind of filtering is legit, and it's not filtering. About the effectiveness, I don't share Luke's optimism, maybe, or Mechanic's optimism. I think that it will be, I think that ultimately, the main point will be money. If this is not different from the argument that Eric Voskuil does about government censorship via empty block on the blockchain. If the money that the enemy puts on Bitcoin to create wrong blocks, so basically empty blocks or spam filled blocks, is more than the money that the market is available to put for real blocks, then we will be eventually overpriced. So my optimism is not just that some technical filtering will solve the thing. I think that ultimately what will solve the thing is when the free market will actually invest in censorship resistance more than our enemy is currently investing in spam or DDoS attacks or censorship attacks. And so I think that filtering may actually not help so much. But I still defend it as a legit market choice. Is looks pool, and it looks node, and it looks implementation, and it makes a reasonable technical argument, and so everybody's freaking out for no reason, in my opinion. I'm not sure that that Knots will fix spam, because the spam that gets on chain anyway, we will still mine on top of it. So I don't think it will work, but I think it's a legit and honorable attempt. I don't know if you disagree, Luke.
Even if it doesn't entirely eliminate the spam, it's still confirming several times more legitimate transactions that would otherwise be forced to wait several blocks later.
That's a good point. Even just one pool that selects a real transaction over spam, it's including this transaction that if all the pools will be behaving the same way, they will never enter the chain. So I agree with that. It may not be effective into stopping the spam attack, but it will be effective at least into confirming some transaction every now and then, which is a good idea, I think.
And keep in mind the legitimate transactions are paying fees also, so the difference in fees is very negligible usually. Sometimes, for whatever reason, Knots actually comes out with more fees. But it's at worst negligible unless someone starts doing something nefarious. I think in the long run, other miners will see how good this is for Bitcoin and will slowly start to use these policies on their own, and the effect will be compounded just for the benefit of Bitcoin.
Even if it could go way worse before it gets better, because the spam attacker right now raised something like 8 million specifically to spam the chain. So we can expect some economic power for backing up the spam attack.
It's a possibility.
But I think it's also important to remember, and I'll speak as a miner right now, not as an Ocean guy, that the thing miners should be excited about with Ocean is not the here and now. Not that, I mean, what we're doing is wonderful. Where we're going is to empower the miners to create their own block templates. It's the #1 reason I want to be involved with these guys. That's what I want to do. I want to, as Mechanical point out, I'm currently a hasher, and I want to be a miner. And this is the only path to that. And once I become a miner, and hopefully hundreds and thousands of you also become real miners, and we'll each make our own decision. These things will settle out. Some of it will be economic, some of it will be philosophical, but it doesn't matter. The network will run the way that it's supposed to run when we have diversity in block template creation.
Still speaking a little bit of censorship, are you guys censor now conjoint transaction? Because it seems that like Whirlpool guys are not very happy. Is this a censorship or just filtering or just by chance happened?
Mechanics, you can take this.
Yes.
Right? What do you mean by CoinJoin?
Well, I mean, I'm just quoting people on Twitter, X, or whatever.
Well, I think I disagree with you on this before. I mean, I was speaking with Max about it. CoinJoin is any transaction with more than one input, which are we filtering out transactions with more than one input?
No, and last I checked, plenty of CoinJoins are in our templates that we're trying to mine constantly.
Yeah, it's a sort of lack of, I'm not trying to be pedantic. Like, when people talk about CoinJoins, they're normally talking about privacy preserving, efforts where you have multiple parties use a Chaumian blinding process via a coordinator who can take a bunch of inputs, turn them into a bunch of outputs. You know that, even the coordinator themselves doesn't know a way to link the input and output. So it's a great privacy technique. There's loads of implementations of it, two notable others being Wasabi Wallet and Join Market. Obviously, we love these things. Bitcoin is always a very challenging thing to make private, and this is a very clunky system. And you know, Adam Gibson, the creator of Join Market, has this CoinJoin XT thing that would be super cool, and it looks much more like a normal transaction. But anyway, for whatever reason, Samurai Wallet came around yesterday and were like, you're censoring our Whirlpool transactions. And obviously they got caught in the spam filter because they put a bunch of stuff in the op return. What is it, 46 bytes they use, and we don't have anything above 42. So we caught it, and you know, the whole thing was phrased as like we've targeted them and we've made a specific new policy to, you know, block these things. In reality, we didn't even remember these guys existed until they started complaining on Twitter. And we're like, you guys use 46 bytes in op return? Why? And they're like, why are you censoring us? And we're like, oh, okay. So it's been annoying dealing with that, but we've made some good faith efforts to try and be like, okay, well, we genuinely don't want this stuff not in the chain. We want CoinJoins in there. All the other implementations are going in fine. This one isn't. It wasn't intentional. So, you know, it remains to be seen. I think we have a phone call with them later. Like that's, yeah, I think that's going to be interesting.
Yeah, hopefully we can help them fix their stuff so that works.
Yeah, we hope that we can help them figure out how to do it without having to put a bunch of stuff in op return, and then no one needs to change anything else.
So what do they put in the ops return? I don't get.
So it's, as far as I know, if Shinobi's to be, you know, is treated as reliable, I know they don't like him, but I'm pretty sure he's been accurate here, which is, with a lot of CoinJoin implementations, I think with Wasabi they do this as well. The first time you do the CoinJoin, it costs money, and then if you go on for future rounds, it's free, or if you're below a certain. So they're keeping in the op return data about who's already joined, so it's free as you go down. There are obviously other ways to do this, like a private database. I don't know why it needs to be an op return, but they sent us a long explanation, and I haven't actually read it yet, so I'll decline to comment further.
No, I want to make sure that it was very brief, but I want to make sure everybody understood what Luke just said a second ago, which is we are going to try to help them.
Yeah.
So understand that this isn't about censorship. People that are trying to do legitimate things for the right reasons, we're going to try to help them.
And not even just legitimate. This is something that's, you know, CoinJoins are very good for Bitcoin.
Yes, yes.
It's something
But
we'd want to encourage even.
You know, I think that's one of the big things is we're embroiled in this at the moment. This stuff happens in the Bitcoin community. The way I look at it is I have complete confidence in the people that I'm on the stage with, that each of them in their heart wants to do the best thing for Bitcoin. I hope they feel that about me as well. And so we are going to disagree on certain things sometimes. But we're doing it from the intention of what's best for Bitcoin. When you're working with somebody who doesn't want the best for Bitcoin, but then is complaining, that's where the problem comes in my mind. Because, you know, as Luke said, we're going to try to help them. We'll try to find, if they're doing it for the right reason, then in most cases, everybody's going to try to help each other, right? But I encourage you all, like, look at the heart of the person that you have a conflict with and see, you know, where are they coming from? If they're coming from a fiat, greed, Wall Street perspective, then yeah, proceed cautiously. But if they're coming from the right perspective, let's leave the toxicity aside.
It would be nice if people could assume good faith a bit more. Obviously, like, I don't understand how anyone can't have the heuristic of, if someone's making a decision that seems to be making their life very difficult, they must have a good reason to do it. Obviously, the spam filtering we're doing, it would be extremely a lot easier living life if we just didn't do it, right? Because we have to argue with trolls all day, every day. And you can argue that it's outrage marketing and it's kind of helpful in some things, but it's not what I want to be doing, sitting on Twitter all day, arguing with people about why we're doing a thing and how we're censoring and all this stuff. Because we're not. There's a reason we're doing it, and any intellectually honest person is going to sit there and go, I know these guys. I know that they wouldn't do this if there wasn't a good reason for it. Let's reserve judgment and let's figure out why they're doing what they're doing before we join this pitchfork of just burn everything to the ground. There is definitely a good reason for it. Maybe we're even wrong, and I will genuinely engage in discussions with people that say, I see what you want to do. I think this is a better way of doing it, or I don't think it's going to be effective. I'm totally happy to listen to that, but you know, it's not necessarily always approached that way, and I wish it was. So it would be helpful. And I actually hope that we'll transition to talking about some of the things we do that everyone actually likes.
Absolutely.
So let's do that.
I agree with you. So,
Oh, you got one.
okay. Look, I have a question for you. Hopefully you are going to reply to me. So I'm talking a little bit about the history of Eligius. That was the name of your project before Ocean, right? So you were the first advocating for the decentralization of the template production, right? And to switch into the from pools to miner. And what was the story behind that? You were thinking about that since what year? What's the story behind Eligius?
Eligius wasn't originally pursuing a decentralized goal. That came maybe a year or two after I started it, but ultimately always has just been a hobby until Ocean.
Okay, so also I think that right now many people are talking about the implementation of Stratum V2, but they took a bunch of ideas from Eligius and from your thinking, right? I am correct in that?
Yes.
Okay.
I think it was 2013 when I came out with...
No, because right now many people are convinced that it's something, a new fix that should be implemented, something brand new, but it wasn't.
No, the specifications for Get Block template had this design in mind from 2013, I believe it was. And it never fully got realized, and a lot of that was that nobody cared to use it. Miners didn't care at the time. And that may potentially be an issue going forward, which is why we've done some plans with Ocean to have a lower fee for miners that actually participate in making their own blocks.
So Get Block template was straight on V2 before it was cool.
Yeah, and there was, multiple names throughout the whole process.
Okay. So, which names? I'm curious.
After Get Block template and before Stratum V2, I believe Matt had called it Better Hash.
Okay.
Better Hash, right.
Wow, nice. And so, when Stratum V2? Why are you guys waiting at Ocean implementing Stratum V2? Why not now? Because there is a pool, maybe in demand pool, I don't remember the name, that already implemented Stratum V2 they are trying to implement. You are waiting for what exactly?
Well,
2 weeks.
2 weeks?
It's also modular, right? You can implement this bit, but not that bit. So, like, Brains has had, the encryption part of SV2 for ages. So,
right.
I mean...
It's important to note that what we're interested in with Stratum V2 is miners making their own blocks. It's not enough to just use it for encryption or whatever. It has to be the full solution. As far as waiting, we're not really waiting. I've already started diving into it a little bit, but the goal was to get the pool back up and running before moving on to that. Just so that there's another solution out there that's actually making blocks that are good for Bitcoin.
So just a question about that. So all the current implementation in production of Stratum V2 are not doing the miner side block production yet, right? Even there was a code that Steve Lee from Spiral published, like, here's the code, is already working. Is that already doing the miner side template production or not yet?
I'm not sure yet.
Okay.
Okay, so I have a question for Bob. You touched the topic briefly. Why a mining farm now should join Ocean? Also, remember during your presentation in South Carolina, you talk about the idea of your goal behind your mining farm is just doing the best for Bitcoin. Because when you do the best for Bitcoin, you're also doing the best for your own project, for your own business. So Join Ocean is doing the best for Bitcoin and for your business. Why other miners should join the project?
Well, I think that we live in a world, let's set the state of the world today. We have 12 to 15 pools that are mining all the blocks. 5 to 6 of them are 90%, which means that we have 5 to 6 organizations making the block template decision. I'm not here to throw arrows at anybody, but let's just say that the scrutiny on the Ocean blocks has not been applied to anybody else. And I think there are warts in all of them. But regardless, none of the companies we call mining companies, even the big ones, the Riots and the Clean Spark, and I mean this in no disrespect to them, but none of them are miners, just like Barefoot is not a miner. I mistakenly called my company Barefoot Mining, and now I regret it because it should have been Barefoot Hashing. I learned my lesson. But to try to stay true to my name, we will become a miner. But you mentioned my talk mirror, and one of the things that I'm driving toward, that I think every miner should be driving toward, is sovereignty. That you are not going to be sovereign in your mining operation unless, I call it the miner stack, and the stack would be energy production, ASICs, the chips, system production, operations, block template creation. If you don't have control across that stack, then you're not sovereign. And you're really in a position where you're beholden to somebody else in order to accomplish mining, unless you do that. So the goal for my company is to do that. And I think the most urgency right now is in the block template creation pool side. I think other miners, if they're really mining for the best for Bitcoin, if that is their objective, and they believe, as I do, that ultimately they'll get rewarded for that, low time preference behavior, right? It may not be the best thing on this block, whatever block 820,197, may or may not be the best thing to mine with Ocean right now on that one, but I can tell you over the next several 100,000 blocks, the best thing will be to be with Ocean, and the best thing for Bitcoin is for Ocean to be successful. Now I'll say also, I sure hope another 8 or 10 pools spin up, maybe more. You know, we need that. There's probably a theoretical maximum. I think we've talked to some of these guys about it before, but you know, maybe there's somewhere between 1 and 200,000 is the maximum pools that you could ever expect to exist, just mathematically. Because if you don't ultimately get maybe 0.5% or so of the hash rate, the math just doesn't work well enough in terms of cash flow consistency. But you know, pool is Ocean is really the first major announcement in the pool world, in my mind, in a long time, and it's the first one really addressing this core problem. So I hope the rest of the mining community will respond. I can say, by the way, as the first company to commit hash rate to the pool, that it may just be really good luck, but man, we had a good week. I mean, it was a really good week for us. We got a lot of Bitcoin, so you know, we found 2 blocks, and December's going to be a great month.
So, is there? I don't know if this is something that can be addressed in public or not, but just feel free to refuse to answer. Is it true that these very lucky blocks were both found in your own hydro facility, or was like misinterpreted?
The first one was found by my
So the
stuff.
first block of Ocean was created in the place where we were launching Ocean.
Oh no, it was found in by my hashers, but unfortunately it wasn't in South Carolina.
Not in that. Okay, that would be so. Yeah. That would have been so epic.
I know, but I mean, I think God smiled upon us as it is. And by the way, that's one of the coolest things. It doesn't really mean anything in the long run. I actually knew, like I was thrilled, didn't even sleep for the next day, when I found out that one of our systems mined the block. I've been participating in this market since 2017. It's the first time that in all my hashing power, I knew that I actually did something.
You found a block.
I found a block, you know, you know, that's amazing, right? That's amazing to know that. But it's pretty simple. But no other pools provide that information.
Yeah, we were talking about it, and I was just genuinely taken off guard by how much fun this brought back to mining. Like, when everything's behind the black box and you're just rented hash rate, you're leaving your machines around and you're printing sats and it goes up and you withdraw it. And now, like, we've got the entire Bitcoin community watching, And like when we found the second block, I just tweeted, "What?" And like everyone liked it. Like everyone cares again, which was my whole critique of the standard payout model now for pools, which is FPPS, which is defined by don't worry about the Bitcoin network. Like we will find blocks, but we will just pay you regardless of what happens. And everyone goes, "Oh, who cares about Bitcoin?" Like I'm printing sats. And like with our pool again, like a lot of people were nervous and critical of it because it's not that kind of model. We don't pay you. Bitcoin pays you, so that we don't act as an intermediary. This is good for every reason, except some people get nervous about cash flow because it's random when you find blocks as opposed to, you know, a guaranteed payment from someone that is going to take off the top as a result of providing that service to you. But it wasn't just us, right? It wasn't just like the half an exahash that we have money with us. It was everyone. The entire Bitcoin community was just like, I can't believe it. People saying they're going to convert to Catholicism. Like, it happened.
Definitely a sign at this point. Come on. So what you guys were expecting, I mean, not the 2 blocks, of course, but the hash rate, the growth of the hash rate is going better or worse than you were expecting. And also all the attention and the criticism was something expected or really still surprising you in a week?
No, I'll touch on that because this decision to filter out according with NOT's policies instead of core was basically obvious to us all from the beginning, so much so that it never really came up. And this was an upsetting characterization of what happened here, and it was one, because it caught you off guard, let's be honest. And I didn't want that to happen, but it's ultimately something we're not trying to hide. We couldn't hide it anyway. It's something we're proud of doing, and it didn't come up, and it wasn't a part of the launch. And this was a thing that people criticized us for. But at the end of the day, it's transparent. The block template was up there for everyone to see before we even found a block, and the knowledge that we were going to filter as we would. The minute people asked, we said, yes, we're definitely going to do that. And then there was more confusion because people said, well, you don't seem to be because of the template. And we went, yeah, we just haven't put NOTs 25.
Yeah, it wasn't ready for the launch. People would have complained we were false advertising if we had said that.
Yeah, I mean, for every reason, people feel misled and annoyed, and that was... There's definitely culpability there. I will definitely take some culpability for not thinking ahead and realizing it would come across that way. But at the same time, nobody accidentally mined a block that caught them by surprise that said, there's no inscriptions in here, you lied to us. This, first off, that was never our intention, but also that didn't end up happening. We've already found 2 blocks and both of them didn't have that filter. So the filter's on now. If you really don't like it, of course, you're not having to contribute your hash to it. You're not obliged to. But it's very well established that that is what we're doing. So,
but let me stress this point a little bit more. Even before miner-side block production, which, as Bob said, is the main point of everything, it is the real goal. But even now, all this debate happened looking at the next block template. So people were looking, oh, watch this. From the template that Ocean is publishing, I see that they are not including this transaction that is present in core. Why? And then the response, oh, because we're using NOT. Oh my God, so you will filter out inscription. Well, yes, of course, we use NOT. Oh my God, that's terrible. But then somebody else, look guys, they are not really because they're using version 23. So some of them are in and some are out. So all the discussion happened before the block was mined. And every hasher, they're still not miners because they don't run nodes, they do not. So just to be sure, how many of you really understand, feel comfortable with this distinction between the pool producing the template and the miner producing the template? Raise your hand if you completely understand that, because otherwise,
there's.
Okay, let's do like a small step back. So how does do you allow that, like 2 minutes of?
Yeah, go for it.
I do want to point out.
Be the one allowing that.
You're the moderator, not the.
Okay. I do want to point out though that the arguments and stuff, the trolling about this all actually started before we were even doing the filtering, because we had told people, frankly, yeah, it's going to be filtered.
Yeah, but the reason they knew we were not doing
No, but we were still. We didn't have the filters yet.
Exactly.
It was just
and in the block, it was evident, right? So so when we discuss about F2 pool, Luxor, what we discuss is, look, this block that was already mined and it's already done, and you already contributed your work to, This has these characteristics. With Ocean, all the debate is, look, this block that is going to happen, and you can choose to direct your effort toward it or not, this will have these characteristics. This is already a good change, a very critical change in direction.
Yeah, I'll jump on it because, like, this is the thing with Stratum v2 is there was just so much low-hanging fruit for stuff we could fix today that would make mining way better than it already is without needing that. And it's kind of, you know, we grabbed it all. So the transparent block template thing, this was great to do for the reasons you just said. And another pool already decided to start doing that. So this is in line with the whole goal of the company. It's just make Bitcoin better. Like, it doesn't really necessarily matter so much about the company more than it does just about busting the system wide open. So as you said, you got 5 or 6 entities that are, you know, constructing 90% of templates.
90, yeah.
Right, so what that means is 5 or 6 people are deciding what goes in blocks, and they are getting all newly mined Bitcoins themselves. So everything newly mined is going through this tiny funnel. By just with our second block, not the first one because we messed that one up, but the second block, we had 16 payouts in that, and those were our biggest miners. They are not their own pool, so instead of it being this number that's 5 or 6, that number is now 5 or 6 plus 16. So you're looking at 21, 22, which is, there's a dramatic improvement in distribution of newly generated coins, and it's relevant. And that was easy to do. You can always have done that. You have to work within the limitations of, you know, firmware and broken Bitmain stuff. But, you know, this is another element of just, hey, we can do this. We can make block templates transparent. We can pay out multiple people from the Coinbase or in the Coinbase transaction. And, you know, there's, you know, other things you can do too.
Yeah, let me try to clarify for everybody who is a little bit disoriented by the discussion what we're discussing about in 2 minutes. So when you mine, you can run your node, create your candidate block in your node, and try to hash it to see if you win. You will win eventually, but it will take on average more than twice the time of your life probably. So that's not nice because you have to pay the rent first. So what you do is instead of mining alone, you mine with 100 other people, and then you divide the reward. So it's 100 times more likely that you will find a block, and then you share it among 100 people. That can be done with one central party that coordinates everything, and the central party doesn't have to decide which is the block, how the block is done. That's not necessary. The central party should just enforce the fair payment, the fair sharing of the payment, the pooling of the payment. But there is no reason for the central party to decide what goes in this block, if this block is signaling for a soft fork or not, if this block is empty or not, if this block is OFAC compliant or not, if this block has inscriptions or not. That is not a decision that the pool must take. But out of laziness, because we didn't have this new technological idea back then, the ecosystem moved toward a situation in which these very few pools, they don't just enforce payment distribution, but they actually take over the construction of the block. What Ocean does already now is, yes, we do the construction, but you can see that before you mine, not after, so at least you can see what you're working to. And then the main goal of Ocean is to get to a point in which you, as a miner, you really become a miner and you build your block however you want. And then we, as a pool, we just enforce fair payment of the pooled resource. This is a complete change of philosophy. And this is what is most important. Not really what we are putting in a block, but the fact that we are moving the responsibility for the block from the pool to the hashers that now, as Bob said, can become miners, because now they are not. They are not miners. They are not discovering Bitcoin blocks. They are just blindly hashing whatever the pool is sending them. So they're, you know, it's a sweatshop of blindfolded people just hashing stuff they cannot see. With Ocean, at least they can take off the blindfold and they can watch what they are working on. So they can even stop. They can say, oh my God, you are censoring. I'm not working there anymore. Good. At least you're watching what you're doing. And the next step is you're not even watching. You are proposing directly from your side. So all these technical terms that you heard, like miner side template production or a get block template straight on V2. This is the point, to move the responsibility away from the pool to the miners, which is a huge deal. And it's already happening with transparency, because at least you take out the blindfold.
And let's tie it back to the name of the conference, right? They're called Unconfiscatable. The fact that the miners are getting paid directly by Bitcoin themselves, at least the ones above a threshold, so starting with the ones who have the most to lose in this context, it definitely speaks to that. Like, if you're mining in a traditional pool, your money necessarily must sit with a third party and must be confiscatable for some time. We at least use, to the extent Bitcoin allows, a mechanism for you to be able to actually mine and then control the results of what you mine immediately. Once the coins exist, they are yours, which is so much better than what has been around up until now.
Yeah, and I can speak that it actually works, because as you said, we've had 2 blocks, and you know, in my case, by the way, I will say one of the interesting things about and one of the great transparency pieces is if you go to ocean.xyz, you can see a list of every miner in the pool and how much hash rate they have and how many shares they've generated. That's a wonderful transparency, and all you really know, because when you sign up, all you really have to do is your username is the Bitcoin address that you want your proceeds sent to. What we do, by the way, which I'll say here publicly, is that we don't put all of our hash rate in one address. And so we split it up. Actually, it's split up. I think we've got maybe 15 different addresses in there, all of different sizes. Part of it, by the way, is it's an interesting thing, a little sidelight, is I often find, would anybody here be offended if you walked up and you met somebody new and they said, how much Bitcoin do you have? Anybody ever have that? Of course.
Of course.
Well, I find it funny that miners are so overt often with how much hash rate they have, because I believe it's basically the same question, you know. And so when you hear people out there, if you're a miner at a big scale or a small scale, don't tell people how much hash rate you have. That's almost the equivalent of saying how much Bitcoin you have. It's definitely the equivalent of how much Bitcoin you're generating, right? That's a simple mathematical calculation. So hide that shit. I mean, be a Bitcoiner, protect your sovereignty, protect your privacy, and don't ask people that question.
Yeah, this is always the price of transparency and greater responsibility. Well, it is that you have to take greater responsibility. That's the price of greater sovereignty, right? So the fact that you're mining essentially in a verifiable scheme where everyone can know everything else, and you can actually, we haven't even said this yet, you can verify the payout split. That isn't possible in any other context currently. You just have to trust that the pool decided to split the fees according to what you actually mined. And there's just no way to verify that. And with us, the Tides payout system means, yes, you can verify what you actually have. But again, the price of that is everything's in public for everyone to know. So that means if you need to operate privately, you're going to have to take that into consideration. And that's analogous to how Bitcoin itself works. If you want private transactions, be a Wall Street guy with a bank account, and no one's going to know what goes on except you and maybe some government people. But if you want Bitcoin, then all your transactions are in public for everyone to see, because that's the only way other people can verify that they have coins when they get them, right? That's how you get rid of a bank account. Everything has to be public. So by its transparent nature, Ocean makes everything public. So if you don't want everyone knowing how much hash rate you have, do what Bob does and break it up a little bit for sure.
So just, it may not be obvious for everybody, but this pool is non-KYC, only based on permissionless creation of Bitcoin addresses. So the pool doesn't know who you are, where you're from, how many addresses you have. It does just know that this address contributed these shares of work. That's it. So there's totally no KYC, not even any possibility to do KYC, because you cannot even talk with this Bitcoin address unless you use Bitmessage or I don't know what. So there is not even an address to talk with miners or with hashers. It's completely pseudonymous. So that's also very cool compared to most other miners that are the mining pool that are entering this KYC hell.
Let me stress it, because this is like Bitcoin again, right? If you pay Bitcoin to an address you don't own by a mistake, there is no number you can call. There's nothing you can do about it, right? That's the price of freedom and sovereignty. Same with this address, because of course, with this pool, because I've already had emails, one email so far of someone, oops, I accidentally mined to an address I don't control. Can you fix that for me? And I'd say, no, of course not. That's the price for permissionlessness. I have no way of knowing who you are or the fact that that was you mining to it. So stop mining to addresses you don't control. This is not mummy and daddy pool that will come and fix it all for you. This is sovereign mining. So you can't do stuff like that. You're not going to be able to get away with it. And that's a feature, not a bug. Just like Bitcoin, it's a feature, not a bug.
Yeah, and also, I would add in the future with Lightning and non-custodial payout. You wanted to add this and talk about that a little bit more, Giacomo?
Well, I have to defer probably to Luke. That will.
Yeah, that's
so what
okay.
I know is so far as Lex said, the miners that are making more than some threshold get paid directly in the Coinbase. So when they are mining the block template includes in the Coinbase their own address that they can see. Of course, this doesn't scale to very small miners because there is just not enough space in the Coinbase transaction. Not just the space of the block itself is limited, but also the space of the Coinbase is even more limited by hardware firmware. So basically, it's hard to do a lot of splits. So instead of doing a lot of splits, there is one threshold which is around $400 or something, maybe a little bit more probably at this price. But anyway, there is a threshold under which, for now, you need to send all the money in one UTXO, and then you have to share the ownership of this UTXO somehow to the small hashers. The way it's done now is just to wait to a threshold, automatic threshold, and then you create the UTXO on chain. But this is, I think, where Lightning and other UTXO sharing technique can actually shine in the future. I don't know how much is ready yet, how much Luke feels comfortable yet we can do with Lightning. I think that overall we can do a lot of stuff. Or even if not with Lightning, maybe we can use something like this UTXO that is shared could be something like a Cashew Mint, a Xiaomi Mint, or some other things that makes censorship harder and makes privacy better. So I think there is a lot of research to be had in interaction with Lightning. I don't know how much of that you're already actively considering, and how much will happen in the future.
We have various plans, but I think it would take a whole talk to go through them all.
Well, but you have to give that talk eventually.
Yeah, probably closer to when it's ready.
Legit.
But yes, we definitely have plans to enable Lightning.
So I don't know if that's possible, but if you have Lightning payouts, that's also something that no pool tried yet, which is very, very cool. One of the limitations of a payment from a mining pool is that the Coinbase has to be mature in 100 blocks. So for 100 blocks, you cannot spend it. But if you get paid directly into a Lightning channel, that's not easy to do. We discussed that a little bit. But if you can use Lightning immediately, then you can also spend before the 100 blocks, which would be very, very cool. But there are a lot of problems with that. The first of all is that you cannot predict the ID of the Coinbase, which is, of course, unpredictable. But anyway, I think it will be a very cool field of research.
Well, the idea is basically to have it so that people can use Lightning to buy the shares after you mined them.
For example.
And so by doing that, all the small miners' shares would be collected by these large liquidity providers, and they would much easier meet the threshold for just a regular on-chain.
So a small miner could basically get out immediately with Lightning from the share investment.
Right, even before a block has been found.
That's very cool.
Yeah, sure. Let's talk a bit, like, for anyone that maybe didn't get that. Basically, you have this problem, and this is the problem with P2Pool and any sort of more decentralized approach to Bitcoin mining, is what do you do with people that only mined a few sats? Because it doesn't make sense for that to be a UTXO. They don't even want it because they wouldn't be able to spend it without the entire thing being a transaction fee. And this is only a problem that's going to get worse, right? Because the more Bitcoin grows, the more transaction fees are going to cost. So what do you do with small to medium-sized miners? Well, the best thing to do is essentially you gather them all up before the rewards are given, and instead of giving 10,000 guys a few sats, you have someone give them all those sats preemptively inside Lightning channels, and then all of the payments are given as one big lump on-chain to the guy who paid everyone over Lightning. So this guy is essentially, he's a liquidity provider. He comes along and he finds these 10,000 tiny miners, and he says, all right, I've got 6 Bitcoin here. I'm going to buy up everything you guys are mining and sum it all into one huge UTXO. And this will operate as a functional marketplace where the small miners can sell everything they're doing at a slight discount, because then they're getting the massive benefit of not having to deal with the on-chain fees. So you mine, you get everything you would have mined on-chain inside Lightning immediately. Maybe you do that with a bit of a discount. Or you forfeit a little bit of your reward to be able to do that, but the benefit is obvious, right? There's a reason you'd pay for this. And the liquidity provider that turns everything into a giant UTXO, they get to increase their Bitcoin instead. They have to deal with a lot of probable complexity, but they have to maintain some Lightning infrastructure. But the point is, the future with Ocean, and this is in my opinion the most revolutionary part about it, because we're low on time here, but I'm getting kind of inspired to talk about it again now. I've been dealing with haters all week, and I'm just kind of absolutely dead by it. But this is the revolutionary part. Like the Stratum v2, the decentralized block template construction is great, and it's inspiring, and I'm glad that people are so enthused by it. But no one really talked about what do you do with small miners before, because where were we going to end up with that? Naturally, if we hadn't have done anything, all that would happen 5 years from now is every big FPPS mining pool would just also be a bank account, where people just internally moved around sats, and even people that weren't miners would just have an account with Foundry or an account with Antpool, and you just send each other sats internally, because there's no way to handle these tiny UTXOs. So you have to leverage Lightning to do it. And this is a way to do it where, rather than crudely say, if you mine, the pool will send you sats that are just out of our own pocket, and again, we'll go and make ourselves whole with the network. Instead, we're saying, let's actually do it properly. Let's have a liquidity provider come along, and they act as a big miner buying up hash rate. They buy all of the work done by other miners. They turn it into one giant thing. Then the UTXO fees don't hurt anymore, and all of the small miners essentially mine directly into Lightning channels, and you basically bust the whole thing open again and stop it from rolling downhill into this horrible custodial model where pools all just turn into banks. So that to me is actually the most exciting part of it.
And as a nice side effect of this, you get people involved in Bitcoin mining who otherwise couldn't be, because they have too much heat or they have really terrible electric prices. They can get involved as a liquidity provider and have a part of the mining process.
Yep.
So to clarify, somebody with a lot of money but without any hardware facility could decide to enter this market, pay via Lightning all the small miners, and get in exchange their shares, so they can get the UTXO without having an ASIC at home. They just have money, and they provide the money to pay out the small miners via Lightning, and they get the UTXO, which is also decentralizing mining also beyond people that can actually buy and run some kind of, think about somebody in Cuba getting some ASICs there, cooling systems there. I mean, it's hard. Maybe you have some Bitcoin though, you can still mine indirectly through this market, which is cool.
Yeah, and I think it ties back together even to the block template creation. So one thing, as I've talked to a lot of Bitcoiners that I don't think a lot of people have put their heads around yet, is that block space itself is a commodity. In fact, you could argue that it is maybe a more scarce commodity than Bitcoin itself. Because if we look at a given time frame, let's talk about the year 2024, there will be approximately 53,500 blocks mined. There will be approximately 3,000 to 4,000 transactions in every one of those blocks. That means on the order of 200 million transactions will go through the system next year. As things sit right now, 5 or 6 people are going to decide what goes in those. What we're going to do is change that so hundreds or thousands of people can make that decision. But it's a very powerful position, I think one that comes with a lot of responsibility. But in essence, if you are somebody, let's say, that will possess access to 1% of the world's hash rate, it means that you're going to make the decision about 2 million of the transactions that will be part of it. And once block space is used, unlike Bitcoin, it's not reusable, right? It is gone forever. You know, we're at block, whatever we're at, 80, 2200. That one's done. That block space, as somebody paid for it, a miner, one of the pools found that block, and they own it. It's a very powerful position. And block space is not something that, you know, short of another block size war or a change in block time, there really isn't much to be done to change how much goes through that system. So I think thinking about it as a commodity and thinking about the power and responsibility that comes with being in the position of deciding what goes in those blocks is tremendous.
We run out of time perfectly, almost perfectly. I wanted to have some time for a question, but there's no time left, I guess. So if anybody has question, I can reach out to you guys, ask you directly. So I think we cover the major topics around there. And I can say personally, I'm even more bullish on the future on the Bitcoin mining. And thank you very much, guys, for this conversation, and looking forward for all this updated and everything going on with Ocean and other projects around Bitcoin mining. Thank you so much.
Awesome. Thank you so much, guys, for closing out the day. If you are a speaker and you have never signed that artwork on your way out, on your way down, please throw on your signature. All right, Luke, you finally made it to Unconfiscatable. Been inviting you for years. Good job. All right, guys. This actually concludes our day one. Hope everyone had a great time. I know these presentations have been awesome. Yes, a few speakers did cancel on us, had them back, couldn't make it last minute. Jack Mahler's got sick, but he will be on tomorrow morning for over a Zoom. We will, try to get him and chat with him. Is it done? Oh yeah, we have to find another Sharpie. If anyone has a gold or a silver Sharpie, that would be awesome. If not, we'll buy one like tomorrow somewhere downstairs. And yeah, Greg Foss couldn't make it as well, but we always try to bring you absolutely the best speakers. I don't have much else to announce. The carnivory dinner will begin at 6 p.m. If you already have a gold bracelet, you're good. If you don't have a gold bracelet, but you signed up for it, come see us. I'm going to stay down here for a bit. I'm trying to find out how many spots we have. If you're interested in purchasing your seat at the carnivory dinner, we may have 1 or 2 left. Again, come and see me here. Other than that, do I need to make any announcements? Any of our staff, volunteers, Surfer Jim? Am I missing anything? Oh, the carnivory dinner is at top of Binion Steakhouse. It's less than a 5-minute walk from here. It'll be a little bit of a maze inside once you're in Binion's, but you can ask an employee. It's on the top floor. I don't know what floor it is, that's why it's called top of Binion's. But that elevator to get there is a little bit of a, I guess, a treasure hunt. Oh, there's a local Vegas meetup group that's meeting at Bar Canada. You're welcome to join them. After the carnivory dinner, people will be, scattering around. Please be in the app, in the Telegram app, right, in the group chat. If you're not in the group chat, check your email. There's a link, or just ask people. They're in the group chat, and they should be able to add you into the group chat, or come and see one of the staff. Thank you so much to all the volunteers. Thank you to our sponsors. I think Jolts was the sponsor I haven't mentioned, and I see a Jolt shirt earlier. So check out their booth as well. Any quick questions? Am I missing anything? Questions? Everyone's just sitting, waiting for me to say. All right, I think this concludes day one. On day two, we're probably going to have more announcements. Thank you again for the sponsors. Thank you again for all the speakers. I don't know if we're still live or not. One more round of applause for all the speakers. This has been an incredible day one. This is a great event. I hope to see everyone back. Mel, do I need to announce anything other than like carnivory at 6 for drinks? Okay. All right. Awesome day one. Thank you so much, guys. Tomorrow morning, just like we did the lightning, the Jade guys are going to do a walkthrough of Jade. That will be at 9:15 tomorrow. A walkthrough of Jade. It will not be recorded. And then we will do opening remarks with Jack Maulers through Zoom at 10 in the morning, like today. All right, don't get too drunk. All right, thank you guys.